I've been a cop for 19 years, long enough to know when something's wrong, even before it happens. That night, I felt at the moment I stepped out of my car. The parking lot of the station was almost empty, except for a few dusty patrol cruisers lined up under a flickering streetlight. The air smelled like wet concrete and rust. It had been raining earlier, not enough to wash the streets clean, just enough to make everything damp and heavy. I checked my watch. 10:56 p.m. For minutes early for my night shift, but I already wished I'd stayed home. The old police station sat on the edge of town, the kind of place built in the 60s and never updated since. Faded yellow bricks, thin glass windows, and that awful humming sound from the fluorescent lights inside. They said it used to be a post office before it was turned into the precinct. You could still see the old outline of the letters on the wall if you looked close enough. As I walked up the cracked steps, I noticed something strange. The front doors were already propped open. That never happened. We always kept them locked at night. Inside, the front desk light was on, but no one was there. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed off the tiled walls. Nothing. Usually, Officer Daniels handled the evening handoff. He was chatty, loud, always humming some country song when I walked in, but tonight it was quiet. Too quiet. Just a low buzz of lights and the faint sound of rain tapping against the glass. I hung my coat on the rack and signed my name in the logbook. The pages were damp, as if someone had spilled water on them recently. Or maybe something else. I didn't think too hard about it. I told myself Daniels probably went to grab coffee. Still, the silence pressed down on me, heavy, watching. When I made my way toward the briefing room, the hallway lights flickered, once, twice, then steadied. That old wiring again, I thought. We complained about it for years, but nothing ever got fixed. I passed the holding cells. Empty. The doors were shut, but the lights inside were off. Usually, at least when the cells was occupied. Drunk drivers, petty thieves. But tonight, the whole place felt abandoned. At the end of the hall, I heard the faint sound of static. It was coming from the radio room. When I pushed the door open, a wave of cold air rolled over me. The police radio crackled softly, spitting out half-sentences, strange bits of chatter, but no clear voice. The chair in front of the console was turned slightly, as if someone had just been sitting there. Daniels, no answer. The static hissed louder, then faded into silence. I turned the volume down, staring at the dark glass of the radio display. For a moment, I thought I saw my own reflection blink, but not in sync with me. Just a trick of the light. I told myself. I was tired. The coffee machine in the break room gurgled suddenly, like it was trying to brew, even though no one had turned it on. The smell of burned coffee filled the air, bitter and old, like it had been sitting there for hours. That's when I noticed something else. The station clock, the one above the front desk, was ticking backward. Slow, steady backward. I froze, staring up at it. Each tick echoed through the hall, softer than it should have been, but sharp enough to make my teeth hurt. I blinked, and it was gone, moving forward again as if nothing had happened. I laughed under my breath. Jesus, I need sleep. But the feeling wouldn't go away. That wrongness, it was everywhere. When I finally made it to the locker room, I saw Daniel's nameplate on one of the lockers. His jacket was still hanging inside, half-zipped, his radio charger blinking red. He never went anywhere without that radio. I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the back exit. Maybe he'd stepped out for a smoke. The back alley was dark, puddles glinting under the faint orange glow of the streetlight. No sign of him. Then I heard it. A faint knock from inside the station. Not loud, just one soft, deliberate knock. I turned around slowly, flashlight beam cutting through the dark corridor. The sound came again, 3 knocks this time, steady and patient, echoing off the metal doors near the holding cells. "Daniels, you screwing with me?" No response. The knocking stopped, but as I walked closer, I saw that the light in one of the cells, the farthest one, had turned on. I hadn't turned it on. The small window in the cell door was fogged, like someone had been breathing on it from the inside. My throat went dry. "Hello," I said, trying to sound calm. "Who's in there?" Nothing. When I opened the viewing hatch, The cell was empty. No one inside. The bed was perfectly made, except there were wet footprints on the floor, bare feet, leading from the center of the cell to the door, and then stopping right where I stood. I stepped back, heart pounding. Something about those footprints. They weren't new. The water had already started to dry around the edges, like whoever made them had been gone for a while. I backed away slowly, keeping my light on the floor. That's when I noticed it. The footprints didn't lead into the cell. They led out. Every instinct told me to call dispatch. But the radio still wasn't working, just static. I went to the main office to try the landline. The phone had a dial tone, but when I lifted it, all I heard was faint breathing. Not static, not silence. Breathing. I didn't speak. I just listened. Slow, shaky breaths. Then a whisper. So faint I almost missed it. Don't stay. I dropped the phone. For the first time that night, I thought about leaving, but something kept me there. Maybe it was duty. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe the station didn't want me to leave. I checked the back door again. Locked. It shouldn't have been. The air inside the building felt heavier now, like the walls were breathing with me. Every sound was sharper, closer. The buzz of the lights, the creak of old pipes. When I walked past the front desk again, I noticed something I'd missed before. A mug, still half full of coffee, steam rising from it, fresh. I reached out to touch it, but it was cold, ice cold. I remember thinking then, maybe Daniels never left. Maybe he was still here. Somewhere. That thought stayed with me for the rest of the night. At exactly midnight, the power flickered. The lights dimmed until the station was barely lit by the red glow of the emergency exit signs. I sat at my desk, trying to shake the feeling that someone was standing just behind me. I told myself not to turn around. Not yet, but I did. Of course I did. And there, by the doorway, was a shadow. Tall, still. Its outline looked like a man, shoulders hunched, head tilted slightly to one side. But it wasn't solid. It was like smoke trying to take shape. I blinked, and it was gone. The radio hissed again. This time, clear words came through. Officer down. Repeat. Officer down. My stomach twisted. Who? I said into the mic. Who's down? Where? Static. Then my name. Whispered. Dragged through distortion. Officer Cole. That was me. The radio went dead. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat there, staring at the walls, listening to the slow creak of the building, waiting for morning. By the time the sun came up, Daniel still hadn't shown. No sign of him. No logs of him leaving. Nothing. But his footprints were still there, leading from the cell to where I'd been standing. And one new set beside them. Mine. The night after Daniels vanished. I came back. I shouldn't have, but I did. The chief told me to take a few days off. Said I looked tired, stressed out. But I couldn't rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that radio, that faint hiss, that voice saying my name. So I went back. The station looked the same from the outside, but something about it felt heavier. The air was thicker. The shadows clung to the walls like they were painted on. Even the parking lot lights seemed dimmer, like the bulbs were fighting to stay alive. When I stepped inside, the smell hit me. Stale coffee, wet paper, and something metallic underneath it all. The kind of smell that sticks to your clothes. The place was quiet again. Too quiet. I told myself I just want to check the logs, maybe pull the radio records, see if I'd imagined it. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about that. I wanted proof. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I sat down at the dispatch desk. The chair creaked, the sound echoing down the empty hall. The radio sat in front of me, black, scratched, old. The kind of model that still used analog dials. The last time I heard it, it called my name. Now it just sat there silent, waiting. I stared at it for a long time before reaching for the knob. When I turned it on, the static hit me like a whispering wind. Soft at first, then growing, filling the room with white noise. It sounded alive. There was rhythm in it, like breathing. I leaned closer, and somewhere in that hiss, I thought I heard words. Not clear ones, just fragments. Help, cold, don't. The hairs on my arm stood up. Daniels, I said quietly, "Is that you?" The static fluttered, then cracked. "Cole." I froze. I felt my throat tighten, my pulse thudding in my ears. The sound wasn't loud. It was soft, almost gentle, like someone whispering right beside me. I pressed the button. If this is a joke, it's not funny. Nothing. Just static again, steady, endless. I waited. Then I heard something new. A faint tapping sound, coming from the radio itself. Not from the speakers. From inside it. Like something small was knocking on the metal casing. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, patient, deliberate. I turned the volume down, but the tapping didn't stop. It grew faster, louder, like a heartbeat speeding up. Then silence. I sat there, holding my breath. My eyes drifted to the hallway mirror. Something was wrong with the reflection. The hallway behind me was dark in real life, but in the mirror, the lights were still on. I turned my head to check. Pitch black. I looked back at the mirror. The hallway lights were flickering now, and someone was walking down it. A shape, not clear, just a blur of movement, slow and heavy. "Who's there?" I called out, spinning in my chair. Nothing behind me. When I looked back at the mirror, it was empty too. I stood up fast, my chair scraping the floor. The sound echoed like a scream through the empty station. I turned off the radio, or at least I tried. The switch didn't respond. The dial just kept spinning, as if someone else was turning it from the inside. The static rose again, louder, sharper, until it was all I could hear. And then, in the middle of it, I heard a woman's voice. Soft, clear, don't listen too long. I froze. The voice wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was behind me. I turned. No one. Just a dim outline of the hallway stretching into shadow. I reached for my flashlight and stepped forward slowly. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the lights, the squeak of my boots. When I reached the holding cells, that's when I saw it. The door to the far cell, the one with the footprints from last night, was open. I knew I had locked it. I remembered a metallic click. Now it hung half open, rocking slightly as if someone had just slipped inside. "Daniels," I whispered again, though part of me already knew it wasn't him. The cell light flickered. For a split second, I saw something in the corner, a shape crouched low to the ground, its outline melting into the shadows. I blinked, and it was gone. The radio in my hand crackled again. "Cole," I raised it to my ear. "What do you want?" No answer, just a soft, wet sound, like someone breathing through water. Then a whisper, "You stayed." The radio went silent. I didn't realize I was shaking until the flashlight beam trembled across the wall. My breathing came out uneven. That's when the intercom system buzzed. The speakers mounted above the hallway. They hadn't worked in years, but now they hissed to life, filling the building with that same static hum. Through the noise, voices began to form. Dozens of them, low, distorted, overlapping. Some cried, some whispered my name, some just repeated the same word over and over. "Cold." I clamped my hands over my ears, but I could still hear them, echoing inside my head. Then one voice cut through all the others. It was Daniels. I knew that voice anywhere. "Cole, open the door." I turned toward the holding cells again. The last one was wide open now. The light inside was glowing a deep, unnatural orange. I took one step closer, then another. The air felt like it was vibrating, a low hum that rattled my bones. When I reached the doorway, I stopped. The cell was empty, but the light was coming from the floor, from the cracks between the tiles. Something pulsed beneath them, something alive, and then the radio screeched. So loud I dropped it. The sound filled the whole station, a sharp, twisting frequency that made my vision blur. The lights overhead flickered wildly, casting long, stretched shadows across the walls. In one of those flashes, I saw her, a woman, standing just behind the bars. Her face was pale, eyes wide and hollow. Her hair clung to her face like it was wet. She looked straight at me and whispered, but no sound came out. Then she was gone. The radio fell silent. The light steadied. I knelt to pick up the radio, my hands trembling. The screen was cracked now, but still faintly glowing. There were words scrolling across it. Digital text that shouldn't have been there. Stay tuned. Then it went dark. I didn't move for a long time. Just stood there, breathing, staring at the empty cell. The intercom clicked again. One single pop of sound, like a mic being tested. And then, in a voice that sounded half human, half mechanical. Midnight. Again. That was all. I turned off everything. The lights, the radio, the systems, and sat in the dark. The silence after that felt wrong too, like the building was holding its breath. When morning finally came, I walked outside. The sun hurt my eyes. The world looked too normal, too bright. I thought about calling someone, a tech, maybe, to check the wiring or the frequency. But who would believe me? Who would believe a man who says his radio speaks to him in whispers? I went home and sat in my kitchen until nightfall. And when the clock struck 12, the radio on my counter, the one I hadn't touched in years, came alive on its own. Just a single hiss of static. Then, Cole, I didn't answer. I just listened. And this time, I swear I could hear breathing. Right behind the sound. I used to like the quiet. Now I can't stand it. After those nights with the voices, I started hearing things in every bit of silence. Every hum of a light. Every tap of rain on the glass. The station wasn't quiet anymore. It was listening. They said the electrical problems were normal. Old building, bad wiring, outdated panels. But that explanation only worked in daylight. At night, when it was just me and the hum of those flickering lights, it felt like the whole place was breathing. I told myself I was imagining it. That's what people like me do when we start to lose grip. We rationalize it. We tell ourselves the shadows don't move on their own. But I knew better. It started around midnight again. It always did. The lights over the main hallway began to flicker. Not a fast strobe, not random. Slow, rhythmic, almost like a pulse. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was just a voltage drop. But then it began spreading one light at a time, like something walking down the hall, and the bulbs were reacting to it. I remember standing there, hand on my gun, feeling ridiculous for being afraid of lights. But fear doesn't care about logic. It crawls under your skin and settles there. When the power finally steadied, I saw something that made my stomach twist. All the ceiling bulbs were still slightly swaying. Just a little, like something had brushed against them. No wind, no draft, no reason. That's when the humming started. It came from the generator room at the back of the station. Deep, vibrating hums that rattled through the floor. Not mechanical. More like a low note being played on an organ. Too deep to be natural. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward it. Each step echoed longer than it should have, like the sound was trapped in the walls. The generator room door was closed. It shouldn't have been. We kept it open for ventilation. When I touched the handle, it was warm. Daniels, I called. Even though I knew there wouldn't be an answer, I still said his name. Habit, maybe, or denial. The moment I opened the door, the light inside went out. Complete darkness. The hum stopped. And then the flashlight in my hand flickered. Once, twice, and steadied. I stepped inside. The air felt charged like before a storm. My boots scraped against the concrete, and the sound echoed unnaturally loud. In the beam of my light, the generator looked fine. But the walls, they looked wrong. The shadows didn't match the objects around them. Every movement of my light made them ripple, stretch, and twist in ways that didn't make sense. Like the shadows were delayed. Like they were moving on their own, half a second behind reality. I stared too long. The human brain isn't supposed to see things like that. Then one of the shadows moved, without me moving the light. Just one small twitch, like a person turning their head to look at me. I froze. The beam shook in my hand. The shadow tilted its head again. I stepped back, slowly. The light flickered again, and when it came back, the shadow was gone. But the shape of it, the outline, was burned into the wall for a split second, like an afterimage when you stare into the sun. I slammed the door and stepped into the hall. The lights overhead began flickering faster now, as if reacting to me. That's when I heard the intercom crackle. Cole. It said my name again, but this time the voice was distorted, deeper, slower, like someone trying to mimic a human voice, but getting the rhythm wrong. I stared up at the speaker. It buzzed softly, like it was struggling to breathe. Then the lights above me dimmed completely, one by one, until only the exit sign was glowing red at the end of the hall. I should have left. I should have walked out. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something about that red light. It pulled me forward. The farther I walked, the more the shadows seemed to lean toward me. Not move, lean. Like they were stretching just a little closer each time the lights blinked. I started whispering under my breath. I don't even remember what I said. Maybe I was praying. Maybe I was begging. When I reached the end of the hall, the red light flickered, and I saw a reflection in the glass of the exit door. Someone was standing right behind me. I spun around, flashlight raised, nothing, just the corridor, empty. But when I turned back, the reflection was still there. The shape of a man, tall, motionless, standing directly behind me in the reflection, but not in reality. His head was bent slightly forward, like he was staring at the back of my neck. I took a step forward. The reflection stayed still. Then the lights came back all at once, bright and harsh, flooding the hallway. The reflection vanished. I blinked hard, trying to steady my breathing. That's when the power surged. The lights popped and dimmed again, plunging the entire station into a flickering strobe of white and dark. And in each flash, the reflection came closer. Not walking, appearing. One flash at the far end. Next flash halfway down. Next flash just a few feet away. Every time the light blinked, he was closer. I backed away, hand shaking until my back hit the wall. I aimed the flashlight directly at where he'd been. When the light steadied again, he was gone. The flashlight started to die then. The beam thinned, flickered, and finally went out. For a few seconds, I stood there in pure darkness. The kind that presses against your skin. The kind that feels like a living thing. Then, faintly I saw movement. The faint shimmer of something darker than dark itself. Shifting at the edge of the hallway. I turned the flashlight back on, just a weak beam now. And for the briefest second, I saw his face. Or what was left of it. Pale skin, hollow eyes, mouth slightly open, like he was whispering something I couldn't hear. Then the light went out completely. Silence. And then that voice again, this time right behind me. Lights out. Everything inside me went cold. I bolted toward the front desk, slamming into walls as I ran blind. My hands scraped against the corners, my boots slipping on the tile. When I reached the dispatch room, the fluorescent lights flicked back on all at once. But they didn't stay steady. They pulsed like a heartbeat. I looked at the wall clock. Midnight again. Always midnight. And then, in the reflection of the glass radio panel, I saw the same pale face staring at me from the hallway behind. He was mouthing something, but there was no sound. The lights pulsed faster, brighter, until the entire room filled with a white glare that burned my eyes. I covered my face, and when the light finally dimmed, he was gone. Only one thing remained. On the floor, near the door, written in the thin soot that had fallen from the overheated lights, were 2 words. Keep listening. I wanted to run. I really did. But the static from the radio started again. Faint, low, pulling at my attention like a voice through fog. I sat there, staring at it, too scared to touch it and too terrified to turn it off. And then I realized something. The flickering lights, they weren't random. They were forming patterns. Flashes, pauses, flashes again. Like code. Like someone was trying to talk to me through the wiring itself. When I finally turned off the power, the darkness didn't feel empty. It felt aware, like it was waiting for me to make the next move. I sat in that dark station, my ears ringing, my eyes wide open, whispering to myself just to fill the silence. But beneath my own voice, I heard another, soft, breathing in time with mine. And then it whispered, calm and familiar, almost like me, "Don't turn the lights back on." I stopped trusting the lights after that night. When they flickered, it wasn't just a glitch. It was a warning, a sign that something was about to reach through the walls again. But I kept coming back. I don't even remember why anymore. Duty, maybe. Habit. Or maybe that place had already gotten inside my head, whispering for me to return. By the 4th night, the air inside the station felt different. Colder, heavier. The walls creaked even when I wasn't moving. I could hear the wires humming in the ceiling like they were alive. I turned on the radio, out of reflex. It was my only company now. At first, just static. Always static. But I swear I could feel it waiting. The way you can send someone on the other end of a phone call before they speak. Then, faintly, a voice came through. It wasn't calling my name this time. It was crying. A woman, soft and broken. The kind of sound you don't forget. "Help me," she whispered. "Please." I didn't mean to. I froze. "Who is this?" I asked. "Identify yourself." No answer. Just that quiet sobbing under the static. Then another voice cut in. A man this time. Deeper. "You don't belong there, Cole." The sound wasn't like a transmission. It was too close, too clear, like he was speaking from the same room. I looked around. Empty. The radio crackled again. Another voice. This one young, maybe a boy. I took the gun. I didn't mean to shoot her. My hand went cold around the mic. "Who are you?" I said. "This is an open frequency. You're confessing to a crime." Static. And then the same voice again. Quieter this time. She screamed, and I just wanted it to stop. The radio clicked. Silence. I stared at it, heart pounding. The frequency display had changed. No number, just 3 words. Channel unknown. I should have turned it off. But instead, I pressed record. Old habit. The tape started spinning. The reels whispering as they turned. Another voice broke through, trembling, like someone struggling to breathe. I buried him under the tree line. No one looked there. The static rose and fell between each confession, like waves pulling back from shore. One after another, the voices came. Men, women, children, all confessing. Each one speaking in a slow, tired rhythm, like they've been holding these words inside for too long. I left her in the water. I never meant for them to burn. I lied to the officer. He didn't deserve it. They weren't clear transmissions. They were whispers, wet, distorted, like the radio was choking on the words. My stomach turned as I listened. None of these voices were in our records. No missing persons. No local suspects. Nothing. But the way they said my name sometimes. "Cole, write this down. Cole, you're the only one listening." That's what made my skin crawl. The tape kept recording. I couldn't stop. I didn't even blink. At some point, I noticed the shadows again, stretching across the room, bending toward the desk where the radio sat. They weren't moving naturally anymore. They were twitching, like they were reacting to the voices. The room grew colder with every confession. My breath came out in white clouds. I rubbed my hands together, trying to feel my fingers. Then the radio went silent again. The tape stopped spinning on its own. For a few seconds, everything was still. Then the speaker popped, and a familiar voice came through, soft, tired, and full of static. "Daniels." My throat closed. "Daniels." I whispered. He sounded scared. "Cole," he said, "I can't find the door. The lights keep going out." My hand trembled as I pressed the mic. "Where are you?" "Daniels, talk to me." Static swallowed his voice. Then faintly, "Don't let them in." The line went dead. The air in the room shifted. Every light flickered at once, a slow pulse crawling down the hall. And then, through the noise, came the sound of footsteps. Not boots, bare feet, wet against the floor. I turned toward the hall, flashlight shaking. The beam caught the far wall, wet footprints leading toward me. Fresh. They stopped right at the edge of the light. The radio popped again. Cold. This time, the voice wasn't Daniel's. It was a whisper made of air and static, low and breathy. "You've heard us now." I wanted to speak, but my throat felt locked. "Keep recording," it said. "You have to finish what we started." The voice faded, replaced by the soft hiss of static again. The tape reels began turning on their own. One by one, the confessions returned. But they were different now. They weren't talking about other people. They were talking about me. He came back even after the warnings. He wanted to hear the truth. He stayed because the station called him. My hand started shaking. "I didn't kill anyone," I said aloud, though no one had accused me. The voices laughed. Not loud, just a faint ripple through the static. I hit the stop button on the recorder, but it didn't stop. The tape kept spinning, faster and faster, until the reels blurred. Then, through the distortion, a new voice came through. Soft, deliberate, almost calm. You confessed once, too. My mouth went dry. What? The voice repeated, clearer this time. You confessed to us. You don't remember? I shook my head, backing away from the desk. No, I never. Play it back, it said. The tape clicked, reversed. I didn't touch a thing. The reel spun backward, whirring fast, and then the playback started. It was me, my voice, saying things I'd never said. I saw the blood. I cleaned it up. I buried her by the tracks. I felt sick. My chest tightened. That wasn't me. It couldn't be, but it was my voice, my tone, my pauses. The recording ended with the same soft laugh I'd heard in the static earlier. The tape stopped. Silence filled the room again. I just stood there, staring at the recorder, my reflection trembling in the small glass window of the radio. Who are you? I whispered. The radio crackled once more. We are you. The lights in the station went out again, plunging everything into black. In that darkness, the radio kept talking, dozens of voices, all layered over each other, whispering versions of my own words. Every confession I'd heard before, now spoken in my own voice. I couldn't breathe. Then, faintly, beneath all of it, a single voice, female, soft, whispering just for me. You left me there. My blood ran cold. That voice. I knew it. Years ago, a call went wrong. A domestic disturbance. I was too late. The woman didn't make it. Her name had been Evelyn. I'd never forgotten her voice. But hearing it now, through static, through walls, through time, made my knees buckle. Evelyn, I whispered, shaking. I tried to save you. The static hissed, almost like a breath against my ear. You didn't try hard enough. The sound filled the room, loud and suffocating. Every speaker in the station hissing and popping. I covered my ears, but was inside my head now, whispering, screaming, laughing all at once. The tape recorder clicked one last time. And then, silence. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. When I finally looked up, the words were etched into the glass of the radio screen. Record everything. When the morning shift came in, I was sitting in the dark, staring at the blank tape. They asked what I was doing there, why I looked so pale. I told them I'd been recording evidence. But when they played the tape back, there was nothing. No voices, no confessions, just the faint sound of me breathing. I tried to explain, but I could see it in their eyes. They didn't believe me. Before I left, I looked once more at the radio. For a moment, I thought I saw movement in its reflection, a faint outline of a face, my face, but the mouth was still moving when mine wasn't. It whispered one last time before fading out. Confess. There's something wrong with the doors. They don't sound right when they close anymore. Before, it was just a soft metallic click you'd expect, sharp, quick, mechanical. Now it's slower, like the station itself is breathing in before sealing me inside. It started small. The front door would jam, or the latch would catch halfway. I thought it was just the cold, metal expands. Things get stuck. Logical reasons. Always logical reasons. But that night, logic didn't mean anything. I came in around 9. Same routine as always. Coffee, logbook, lights, static humming from the radio before I even touched it. The whole place felt wrong, heavier, darker somehow. Even the air smelled stale, like dust and wet iron. I sat down, tried to focus. I told myself not to think about the voices from before, not to think about Daniels, not to think about what the tape said, but I couldn't shake it. Every sound made me flinch. Every flicker of light felt like someone watching from the corners. It was just after 10 when I first noticed it. The door to the break room was closed. I never closed it. I didn't even remember hearing it shut. I walked over, hand on the handle. It felt cold. Not like metal, but like something that had been sitting in snow. It didn't move. I tried again, harder this time. Nothing. The handle turned, but the door wouldn't budge. All right, I muttered, swollen frame, no big deal. But then I heard a soft creak from the other side, like someone leaning against it, listening. I froze, hand still on the handle. The sound came again, slower this time. A shift of weight, a breath. I took a step back. My flashlight beam trembled across the wood. Daniels, I said before I could stop myself. No answer. Just a faint echo of movement, not footsteps, but dragging. Something brushing along the floor. I backed away and went straight to the control room. Checked every security monitor. Half of them were just static. The rest flickered between empty hallways. But on the far right feed, the break room camera, something was off. The door was open. Only I was still standing in the hallway, staring at it. The monitor showed the door slowly creaking open, the frame bending with emotion. Inside, the room was pitch black, no light, no movement, just darkness that seemed thicker than the rest of the station. Then the feed cut out. A sharp click echoed behind me. I spun around. The hallway door had closed. I reached for it, but the handle wouldn't move. Locked. I tried the next one. Locked. All of them. Every single door in the station. Locked at once. My pulse thundered in my ears. I tried the radio, but all I got was static. I slammed the mic, shouting for dispatch. For anyone. Nothing. The lights dimmed, humming low like the station was holding its breath again. And then, somewhere down the hall, I heard the sound of keys jangling. Slow, deliberate, like someone walking, testing each door. Who's there? I yelled. My voice cracked halfway. The sound stopped. I waited, breath shallow. My flashlight beam danced across the walls, catching dust motes that looked like ash. Then the keys started again, closer this time. I pressed my back against the door behind me, hand shaking on my flashlight. When the sound stopped right outside the room, I could hear the faintest whisper through the crack under the door. It wasn't words, just the rhythm of breathing. I didn't move, didn't even blink. Then, slowly, the handle began to turn, metal scraping against metal, steady, patient, like someone taking their time. I held my breath and stepped away, eyes fixed on that door as the handle reached its end and stopped. Silence. Then, click, the door unlocked itself. I didn't move. Couldn't. The handle stayed still. No one came in. The door just hung there, unlocked, waiting. I swallowed hard, forcing myself forward. My boots felt too loud on the tile as I reached for the handle. I pushed it open just a little. The hallway beyond was empty, but every light was off now, except for one, flickering near the far end, right outside the break room. It pulsed like a heartbeat, and in that faint strobe, I could see something standing near the door. It wasn't moving. It looked like a person at first, tall and thin, head tilted slightly, but the light kept cutting in and out, making it hard to see where the figure ended and the shadows began. Then, as I took one step forward, the shape shifted. Its head turned too far, bending like someone that didn't understand how joints worked. I stumbled back, heart pounding, breath shallow. When the light flickered again, it was gone. The hallway was empty. I turned and slammed the door shut, locking it. My hands were shaking so bad, I nearly dropped the key. The second I did, the lock clicked again, unlocking itself. I threw my shoulder against the door and held it closed. Something pushed from the other side, gently at first, then harder. The pressure grew until the hinges groaned. I could feel every vibration through the wood, every slow exhale from whatever was on the other side. Stop. I shouted. Stay the hell out. The pressure stopped. I waited, chest heaving, my ear pressed to the door. Nothing. Then tap. A single knock. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Like a code. The same pattern kept repeating. I didn't know why, but I recognized it. I'd heard it before, back when the station still had old call signals on the wall. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SLS. It was asking for help. I loosened my grip, just for a second, and the door flew open. The lights went out completely. I swung the flashlight up, heart hammering, but the beam barely cut through the dark. The air felt heavy, thick, like breathing through water. And in that beam, right in front of me, was nothing, just a faint shimmer of dust. Then, behind me, the radio came to life. Static first, then a low hum, and then my own voice. I told you not to come back. The flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering against the floor. The voice on the radio kept talking, calm, measured, but it wasn't me now. It was me from before. I could hear the fear in my tone, the tremor in my words. The recording was from last night. It played the exact moment I'd heard Evelyn's voice. Every breath, every whisper. But then, the voice said something different. Something I'd never said. She's here now. The door behind me slammed shut. Every lock in the building clicked again, one after another, echoing down the hall like gunfire. I spun around, but it was too dark to see. The flashlight was still on the floor, beam pointing toward the door. And there in the light, a shadow moved. Not on the wall, not across the floor. Through the light, like the beam bent around it. It was tall, hunched, moving in slow, uneven motions. And even though I couldn't see its face, I could feel it watching me. The radio crackled again, louder now, distorted my own voice until it sounded like something else entirely. You locked her out. You locked yourself in. I took a step back, shaking. The air pressure changed, ears popping, the kind of silence that comes before thunder. Then, all at once, every door in the station slammed at once. The sound shook the walls. The lights flickered once more, just long enough for me to see it. A reflection in the glass of the control panel. A face, pale, wide-eyed, my own, but smiling. The reflection raised its hand and placed it on the other side of the glass. I didn't. Then it whispered, perfectly in sync with the static. You were never supposed to leave. The light went out completely. For a moment, I thought I was still standing. But when I blinked, I realized I couldn't feel the floor anymore. Couldn't tell where the walls were. The air felt thick, humming, and then I heard the click of the locks again. But this time, they weren't unlocking. They were closing around me. The sound came from inside the walls, from beneath the floor, above the ceiling. A dozen locks, maybe more, all sealing at once. The air grew colder. I called out, "Help! Someone! I'm still in here." But my voice sounded distant, echoing in ways it shouldn't. And then, faintly through the static, Evelyn's voice came back one last time. "You locked the wrong door, Cole." Everything went quiet after that. The last thing I remember was a faint metallic click. Soft, slow, final, like a key turning from the inside. I used to think the night shift was the easiest kind of quiet. You know, calm roads, a coffee that stays warm long enough, and a world that feels half asleep. But after that night, I learned there's a different kind of quiet out here. The kind that listens. It was supposed to be just another routine patrol. Nothing special. Just me, my cruiser, and the low hum of the radio filling the silence. The kind of night where you almost forget why you were the badge in the first place. The roads were empty. Street lights flickered over cracked pavement, and fog rolled in thick from the river. My headlights barely cut through it. I remember checking my watch. 12:47 a.m. I still had 5 hours before shift change. Then the call came in. Possible 10 to 16. Disturbance near the old mill road. The dispatcher's voice was flat, almost tired. I could tell she didn't think it was much. Probably a drunk or a domestic argument that got too loud. I answered. "Unit 12, I'll check it out." Static crackled for a second before her voice came back. "Copy that, 12. Proceed with caution." I almost laughed at that. Caution? For Mill Road? There was nothing out there except a few abandoned lots and an old house that had been empty for years. Still, I turned off the main highway and headed east. The fog got thicker. My radio started hissing with bursts of static that cut in and out like whispers. At first, I thought it was interference. Then I heard something that didn't sound like static. It sounded like a voice. Soft, muffled, saying something I couldn't quite make out. I turned the volume down, thinking maybe the dispatch line had crossed. But when I did, I realized the voice wasn't coming from the radio at all. It was coming from outside. I slowed the cruiser. The headlights caught something ahead, a shape on the side of the road. At first I thought it was an animal, but When I got closer, I saw it was a person, a man, standing still in the middle of the fog. He wasn't waving for help. He wasn't doing anything. Just standing there. I rolled down the window and called out, "Sir, you all right?" No response. He was facing away from me. His clothes were torn, dark jacket, gray pants, and his hands were hanging limp by his sides. Something about the way he stood, it didn't look right. Too still. I stepped out of the cruiser, hand near my holster, the way you do when something feels off but you can't say why. The air was cold, and the fog made it hard to tell where the road ended. I called again. "Sir, this is the police. You need to turn around." Still nothing. Then he twitched, a small movement at first, like a shiver that ran through his whole body. He turned his head slightly, not fully, just enough that I saw part of his face. His mouth was moving. No sound, just motion, like he was whispering something to himself. I took one cautious step forward. "I need you to stay where you are." His head turned a little more, and that's when I saw it. His eyes were open, but they weren't focused. His pupils were wide, fixed on something behind me. I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing but fog and the faint beam of my cruiser's headlights cutting through it. When I turned back, the man had moved. Not walked, just shifted. He was closer now, maybe 10 feet away. I hadn't heard a single step. "Sir, stop moving." I shouted, drawing my weapon. He stopped. For a second, the fog swirled between us, and I could finally see his face clearly. There was blood around his mouth. Not dripping, dried, like it had been there for hours. And his lips were still moving, repeating something over and over again. I couldn't make it out, so I stepped closer, just close enough to hear. He was whispering, "It's not my turn. It's not my turn. It's not my turn." Over and over. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I holstered my gun and grabbed my radio. "Dispatch. I got one subject on Mill Road, possible disoriented male, requesting." The radio cut to static. Loud, sharp, almost painful. I pulled away from my ear, and underneath the noise, I heard the same phrase. "It's not my turn." Coming from both the man and the static, perfectly in sync. I tried again. "Dispatch, do you copy?" No answer. Just the same whispering rhythm buried in the white noise. When I looked up again, the man was gone. Gone. There was nowhere to go. The road was empty, both sides lined with ditches and dead grass. Then I heard a faint knock. Not from the cruiser. From behind me. I turned, light cutting through the fog, and there he was, standing at the back of my car, closer than before. His mouth wasn't moving anymore. He was just staring. I shouted, "Get on the ground!" He didn't move. Instead, he smiled a small, strange curve of his lips and said softly, "You took my turn." Before I could react, he lunged. I tackled him hard to the ground, wrestled him until I could cuff him. He didn't fight back. Not once. Just kept whispering that same thing. "You took my turn." I called for backup again, but the radio was dead. I sat him in the back of the cruiser and checked the onboard camera. The feed was fuzzy, interference lines cutting across the screen. I turned to look at him through the cage glass. He was staring straight ahead, eyes open, breathing slow and steady. When I tried to talk to him, he didn't answer, just sat there, lips barely moving. And the thing is, I could hear him, not through my ears, through the radio. The same phrase looping through the static. "You took my turn." By the time I got him back to the station, the fog had cleared. The roads looked normal again, empty and still. But the cruiser smelled like rain and copper. When we opened the back door, he was gone. Cuffs still there. Door still locked from the inside. Gone. We searched everywhere. Fields, ditches, nothing. The dash cam footage glitched out halfway through the drive. When it came back, the back seat was empty. I had to file it as a missing suspect. No one believed me. Of course. Probably slipped out, they said. Faulty lock. Except 2 days later. The same cruiser was found again on the same stretch of Mill Road. Different officer. Same complaint. Radio static. Fog. And a man whispering the same words. "It's not my turn." when they brought in the footage that time, I asked to see it. And there he was, the man from that night, standing in the middle of the road again. Only this time, when he looked at the camera, it wasn't him anymore. It was me. Some nights, the walls feel too close. Like the whole station is leaning in, listening. It's strange how silence can be louder than any noise. You start to hear things that aren't there. A breath, a shuffle, a whisper that might just be the hum of the vents. Or maybe it isn't. That night, I remember how still everything was. The holding cells were empty except for one man. The one I'd picked up a few days earlier. The same man from Mill Road. Except it couldn't have been. That wasn't possible. We never found him after he vanished from the cruiser. The cuffs were there. The door was locked. I wrote the report myself. But there he was, sitting in the corner of cell 3 like he'd never left. He didn't look at me when I walked in. Just sat with his head bowed, hands folded neatly in his lap. Evening, I said, trying to sound steady. No answer. The overhead lights flickered once, humming faintly. The kind of sound that makes your skin crawl if you're already on edge. I stepped close to the bars. You remember me? Still nothing. Then he lifted his head. His eyes met mine, and it was like staring into an empty room. No light, no recognition. He whispered something, quiet, almost too soft to hear. What was that? I asked. He said it again, a little clearer this time. It's still not my turn. My throat went dry. I told myself it had to be some kind of game. He'd heard about the first incident somehow. Maybe someone on the force talked. But the way he said it, it wasn't mocking. It wasn't angry. It sounded tired. Like he'd been saying it for a very long time. I tried the radio just to make sure dispatch could hear me. It crackled back, normal this time. Nothing strange. Then, as I turned away, I heard it, a faint whisper from the other cell. I froze. The other cells were empty. At least they were supposed to be. I walked over, flashlight out, checking each one. Empty bunks, steel bars, nothing else. But the whisper didn't stop. It came from the far end, cell 5. When I got there, it went silent, completely silent. I shined a light through the bars. The cell was empty. But I swear I saw something, not a shape, not a shadow. Just movement, like the air itself shifted. Then, right next to my ear, a voice whispered, "You shouldn't talk to him." I spun around, heart hammering. No one there. The man in cell 3 had started humming softly, a low, broken sound that barely formed a tune. I went back toward him, trying to sound firm. Cut it out. He didn't. The humming got louder. Then, from the next cell over, another voice joined in. I stopped cold. The cell was empty, but the sound was clear. Another man humming. Same pitch, same rhythm. Then another, and another, until every cell sounded full. Humming, whispering, breathing, all of it blending together like a low drone. I shouted, "Enough!" Everything went silent again. My flashlight flickered. The beam jumped across the wall, catching something etched into the concrete. Tiny scratches layered over each other. Words, "Not my turn," over and over again. I took a step back, bile rising in my throat. The man in cell 3 finally looked up again. His face was pale, skin stretched too thin. "They won't let me go," he whispered. "Who won't?" I asked. He blinked, slow and deliberate. "The ones you can't see." He pointed toward the far wall. My light followed, and for just a second, I saw movement. Not solid, not human. Just a darker shade of black against the concrete. It slid upward, across the bars, gone before I could focus on it. I felt the air grow colder. He smiled then, faintly. "They like you. You listen." I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until my lungs burned. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, but my voice came out small. "Weak." He tilted his head. "You took my turn." The words hit me like a slap. I started, but he cut me off with a sharp, dry laugh. "You did. You stopped. You looked. You heard. Now they'll come for you instead." The lights went out. Pitch black. For a moment, I couldn't move. The kind of fear that roots you in place. Then I heard it again. The whispering. Dozens of voices now. Layered. Close. Too close. They weren't coming from the cells anymore. They were all around me, filling the dark. Some whispered words I didn't understand. Others said my name. I fumbled for my flashlight. When it came on, the beam was weak, flickering, barely enough to see my own hand. The man in cell 3 was gone. The cuffs lay on the floor where he'd been sitting. I turned in circles, scanning every cell. All empty. Then I noticed something. The whispering hadn't stopped. It was just quieter, fainter, like it had moved inside the walls. The sound crawled along the concrete, slipping through the cracks, up the ceiling, down the floor, until it all merged into one long, drawn-out breath. And then the air changed again. It felt thick, heavy, like I was standing underwater. I backed toward the door. My keys rattled in my hand. That's when I saw it. A handprint on the glass. Fresh, pressed from the inside. I froze. Then, slowly, another appeared beside it. And another. Fingers dragging down the glass from nowhere. I stumbled back, hitting the wall, watching as dozens of faint, greasy handprints smeared across the glass like something unseen was clawing to get out. The whispering rose again, louder now. Angry. It's not your turn. Over and over. I slammed the door open and ran down the corridor, not caring how loud my boots echoed. The lights flickered back on one by one as I passed, like the station was waking up behind me. When I finally made it to the main office, I grabbed a landline and called dispatch. It rang once. Then I heard breathing on the other end. I said, "Hello? This is Officer Cole, badge 12. There's something." The breathing got louder. Then a whisper came through the line, soft and broken. "You shouldn't have opened the door." The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. The station was silent again. When I finally went back to check the cells, they were all empty. No scratches. No handprints. Even cell 3 looked clean. But when I looked closer, I saw something faint, etched into the corner of the floor. Numbers. 12. My badge number. And underneath it, in small, shaky writing, "Your turn." I never liked that side of the building, even before everything started happening. The West Wing always felt wrong. It had been closed off years ago, water damage, they said, old wiring, unstable floors. But we still used the main hallway to get to the archive room, where all the old files were stored. Sometimes when I worked late, I'd hear faint sounds coming from that direction. Not voices exactly, just movement, like someone pacing, slow and steady. But every time I checked, there was nothing. That night, I told myself I wasn't going to think about it. The radio static, the whispers, the handprints, all of it could be explained. Stress, lack of sleep, maybe even carbon monoxide. I told myself, something logical. But then the power flickered again. Just a quick stutter of light, enough to make me look up. And when it came back, the door at the end of the hallway was open. That door hadn't been unlocked in years. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. Part of me wanted to call someone. But who would I call? No one else was on duty that night. I grabbed my flashlight, telling myself I'd just make sure nothing had broken in. Raccoons, maybe. Kids sneaking around. Anything that made sense. The beam cut through the dust, hanging in the air. The smell hit me first. Damp concrete, mold, and something faintly metallic. The kind of smell that sticks to your tongue. The West Wing was darker than I remembered. The ceiling lights were all dead, and the floor tiles curled at the edges from water damage. I could see my breath, even though the rest of the station was warm. Every sound echoed too long. My footsteps, the squeak of my boots, the faint hum of the flashlight. I reached the archive door. It was still locked, but the door beside it, the one marked record storage B, was cracked open. I'd never seen it open before. I hesitated, the beam of my flashlight trembling slightly. The nameplate was rusted, half hanging off the frame. Behind the door, I could see shelves, rows and rows of old boxes. I pushed it open. The smell was stronger inside, like wet paper and something burned long ago. Dust coated everything. Folders with faded labels. Old case numbers I didn't recognize. Then I saw the photos. Hundreds of them, pinned along one wall. Faces, places, evidence shots. But they were all warped. The edges curled, the colors bled together, and every single face had been crossed out with black marker, not drawn over, gouged out, scratched so deep the paper had torn. I stepped closer. Some of the photos looked recent. Too recent. I leaned in, brushing off the dust on one of them. My hand froze. It was me, standing outside the station, taken from a distance, and beneath it, written in faint pencil, "He's next." I stumbled back, my pulse hammering. My light flickered again, just for a second, and in that brief moment of dark, I swear I saw movement, a figure standing between the shelves. When the light came back, it was gone. The air shifted. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was listening. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer, only a faint scraping sound from deeper in the room. I took one slow step forward, then another. The scraping stopped, and then a whisper, soft, dry, right behind me, "File number 12." I turned so fast the flashlight nearly slipped from my hand. Nothing, just boxes stacked high, paper falling apart at the edges. I wanted to leave. I really did. But something in me, curiosity, maybe made me look. I found the drawer marked case files, 10 to 20. Inside were old folders, yellowed and damp. I flipped through until I found number 12. It was dated in 1986. Officer-involved incident. The name on the cover was familiar. Coleman, my last name. The report was barely legible, but I could make out fragments. Unexplained disappearance. Subject last seen in holding area. Witness accounts inconsistent. And then, near the bottom, written in a different pen, "He never left the station." I stared at the page until the letters blurred. Then I heard the door creak, shut behind me. The beam of my flashlight jerked across the room. Empty, but the shadows had shifted. Longer now. Thicker. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't. The air felt heavy again, pressing down on me. Somewhere behind the shelves, a soft shuffling started. Slow, dragging steps. I whispered, "Who's there?" And then, through the dark, came the sound of paper rustling, like someone thumbing through files. The footsteps stopped. Then that same whisper again, this time from the opposite side of the room. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was close enough that I felt the air move beside my ear. I swung the flashlight, but it flickered out completely. Pitch black. I stood there, barely breathing. Then a faint sound, a tap, another, like fingers brushing the shelves. I could hear them moving, too many of them, too soft to see, too close to run. And through the dark, I heard the whisper again, low and steady. "They don't forget." The air grew colder. Something touched my arm. Not a full grip, just a drag, like fingertips tracing my sleeve. I bolted for the door, hitting it hard. It wouldn't move. I shoved again. Locked. I pounded on it, shouting, "Open! Come on!" Then, from behind me, a faint light glowed. My flashlight had rolled onto the floor, beam pointing up at the wall. There, on the wall, where the photos had been, new writing had appeared in the dust. Fresh, uneven, you already know. My hands shook as I turned the knob again. This time it opened, so fast I nearly fell through. I stumbled into the hallway, slamming the door shut behind me. My chest hurt from how fast I was breathing. The hallway looked the same. Empty, quiet, cold. But something was different. The door I'd come through now had a sign on it. A sign I'd never seen before. Evidence lockup, sealed 1986. When I blinked, the sign was gone. I told myself I imagined it. I had to have. But when I went back to main office, I pulled up the digital archive. No case file number 12. No record of a sealed evidence room. Nothing, except for one old note buried deep in the log history. An entry dated 2 weeks before I was even born. Officer Coleman reassigned to night duty. Temporary, until the voices stopped. I don't remember leaving the office that night. I just remember the lights, flickering again as I reached the exit, and in the reflection of the glass door, for just a moment, I saw someone standing behind me. Same uniform, same face, but older, tired, He looked at me and mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then the lights went out again, and when they came back, the reflection was gone. The next morning, I told myself it was just exhaustion, that none of it was real. But when I came back to the station later that day, there was a new folder sitting on my desk. No label, no case number, just one piece of paper inside. A single line written in black ink. West Wing access restored. Continue where you left off. And underneath it, a fingerprint. Mine. It started after the fourth night. At first, I thought I was just hearing things. The wind moving through the vents, the old pipes groaning. The station was old. It made sounds. That's what I kept telling myself. But that night, I knew it wasn't the building. I just clocked out. The clock above the front desk read 3:17 a.m. I remember that because I stared at it for a long time, waiting for the second hand to move. It didn't. Not right away. It stuttered once, then jumped ahead like it had missed a beat. The others had gone home hours ago. The night shift was mine alone. Always was. I told myself I liked the quiet. No calls. No arguments. Just me and the hum of fluorescent lights. But the quiet that night felt heavier. Thicker. Like the air itself didn't want to move. I gathered my things. The usual routine. Signed the log. Checked the radios. Shut the west hallway lights. I was halfway through locking the evidence room when I heard it. A scream. It wasn't loud. It was muffled, distant, like it came from somewhere deep inside the building. At first, I froze. Then I laughed it off under my breath. Probably the plumbing, I told myself. Maybe a coyote outside. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. A woman's voice, sharp, desperate, breaking halfway through. It came from the cell block. I hesitated. I didn't want to go, but every part of me said I had to. Protocol, responsibility, habit. The hallway to the cells felt longer than usual. Every light flickered as I passed under it. The air was colder back there. Always was. But this time it felt colder in a way that clung to my lungs. When I reached the holding area, all 3 cells were empty. I checked each one. Nothing. The voice came again, this time right behind me. So close I felt it against my ear. Help me? I spun around, flashlight raised. No one. But on the concrete floor, in the beam of my light, were wet footprints. Bare. Small. They led from the far cell toward the door, and then stopped halfway. The floor was bone dry everywhere else. I crouched down. The prints were fresh, still glistening in the light. When I looked up again, the cell door that had been shut was now slightly open. I told myself maybe I hadn't closed it all the way earlier. Maybe the latch was loose. But deep down I knew I had. The cell was empty. But I noticed something carved into the concrete wall. It hadn't been there before. One word, scratched deep and uneven. Listen. I took a step back, heart hammering. And then the lights went out. For a few seconds, it was just me, the dark, and my own breath. Then the radio on my shoulder crackled. Faint static, followed by a whisper. Can you hear them too? I froze. The radio wasn't on. I hadn't touched the mic. Who is this? I said, trying to sound calm. No response. Just a faint hiss of static. Then, somewhere beyond the dark, I heard more voices. Dozens of them. Men, women, some crying, some whispering, overlapping, tangled together like waves. I backed toward the hallway, my flashlight trembling in my hand. When I finally found the switch, the lights flickered back on. The hallway looked normal again. Empty, quiet, except for one thing. Down at the far end, someone was standing, just a shape, facing the wall. Shoulders hunched, head low. Hello. I called out. No answer. I started walking toward them, slow, every nerve in my body screaming to turn back. But I couldn't leave someone here, not without knowing who it was. The figure didn't move. When I was about 20 feet away, I realized I couldn't hear my own footsteps anymore. And then it turned. There was no face, just static, like a screen with no signal. The shape flickered once, then was gone. The lights went out again, and this time, I ran. By the time I reached the main lobby, my chest was burning, and the radio was still hissing softly. When I lifted it to my ear, I could make out something beneath the static. Crying. Dozens of voices. Weeping quietly. I dropped it. It hit the floor and went silent. I stood there for what felt like minutes, maybe hours, just listening to the building. And then, from the far end of the lobby, the screaming started again. Not one person this time. Many, all at once. It came from everywhere. The vents, the walls, even beneath the floor. I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still hear them. Screaming words I couldn't understand. Not English. Not anything I had ever heard. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The silence that followed was worse. When I looked up, the clock above the desk was spinning backward. Fast. The second hand twitching violently. The minute hand jerking in short bursts. Then it froze. 3:17 a.m. The same time it had been when I first looked at it. I stood there, shaking, whispering to myself, "You're tired. You're hearing things. It's stress. It's nothing." But I couldn't bring myself to leave. Not yet. I sat at my desk, the radio silent beside me, staring at the reflection in the window. After a few minutes, I noticed something moving behind me, in the reflection only. Shapes, people. They stood in the hallway, staring at me through the glass, their mouths open but no sound coming out. I turned around. Nothing. When I looked back, the reflection was empty too. That's when I saw it. A small streak of water leading from the entrance toward the holding cells. Wet footprints again. Only this time they weren't going out. They were coming in. I followed them, my stomach twisted in knots. They led me all the way back to the same cell, the one with the word "listen" carved into the wall. But now, under that word, there was more writing. Fresh, uneven, carved deep. We never left. The lights buzzed overhead. I could feel the hum deep in my bones. I took a step back, and for the briefest moment, I heard it again, faint but clear, a voice from behind the wall, whispering, crying, "Why did you lock us in?" I don't know why, but I answered, "Who are you?" No reply, just the sound of water dripping. Then a scream so loud it made my ears ring. I stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, landing on something in the corner. A handprint, small, wet, pressed into the concrete. And then another, and another, crawling up the wall like someone had been climbing, dragging themselves upward. I grabbed the flashlight and ran. I didn't look back this time. I don't remember how I got outside. I just remember the cold air hitting me, and the silence that followed. When I finally turned to look at the station through the glass doors, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Inside, the hallway lights were still flickering, but not randomly. They were blinking in a pattern. 3 short, 1 long, 3 short again. I didn't know what it meant until later. I looked it up. Morse code. It meant SOS. I never told anyone what happened that night. The report I filed said malfunctioning lights, possible trespassers. Nothing more. But every time I drive past the station after dark, I still see those lights flicker. Always at 3:17 a.m. Always in that same pattern. Sometimes I pull over and just sit there, engine off, waiting, and sometimes, if I'm quiet enough, I can still hear them. The screams. Low, distant, like the sound is stuck somewhere between then and now. I tell myself they aren't real, that the dead don't scream. But deep down, I know better. They're not screaming to be saved. They're screaming because they remember, and they want me to remember too. I never used to believe in the idea of bad buildings. You know, places that somehow remember things, absorb them like a sponge. But after working in that police station's records department for 7 years, I've changed my mind. My job was simple. Paperwork, reports, nothing dramatic. I didn't even carry a gun. My world was fluorescent lights, cold coffee, and stacks of forms. The kind of work no one looks at twice. Except me, every morning I'd come in, sit behind my old metal desk, and start sorting through what the officers left behind the night before. Arrest reports, witness statements, evidence logs. You learn to stop reading the details. After a while, they start blending together. The same crimes, the same excuses, The same hollow apologies. But one morning, there was a folder on my desk that wasn't supposed to be there. No label, no case number, just a plain manila file, thicker than usual. Edges yellowed like it had been sitting somewhere too long. At first, I thought someone had just misplaced it. Happens all the time. So I opened it, ready to file it under unassigned. But inside, there were pages I didn't recognize. The formatting was all wrong. No signatures, no officer IDs, just typewritten paragraphs, uneven, as if someone used an old machine. The first line read, Incident Report, March 12, 1986. That date caught me. Our system didn't even go back that far. The station had a fire in the early 90s. Half the archives were destroyed. Still, I read on. It was a report about a missing officer. It said he'd vanished during night patrol. His name was Coleman. There was no conclusion, no follow-up, just one line scrawled in pen at the bottom. Case closed. No further inquiry. That didn't make sense. Missing officers don't just get written off. I looked at the next page. It was another report. This one from the same month, same year, but different handwriting. It mentioned screams in the holding cells, officers hearing voices through the vents. Each report got stranger. One described unexplained lights flickering in patterns across the West Wing. Another claimed evidence lockers were found unlocked in the morning, with items rearranged as if inventory by an unseen party. And then there was a photo. It was black and white, grainy. A hallway, probably ours, but darker, older. The image was warped near the center, like something had been standing there when the picture was taken, but never fully developed. I ran my thumb across the surface, half expecting the paper to feel colder where the distortion was. It didn't, but when I looked up, I realized something. The photo matched the layout of our storage level exactly. I should have stopped there. I should have logged it as miscellaneous and gone home, but I couldn't. Something about those reports, they felt wrong. Not fake, but forgotten. So I went looking. The archive room sits below the main floor. Concrete walls, metal shelving. A faint hum of air that never feels warm. I've always hated it down there. No windows, no sound except the buzz of the lights. I brought the file with me and started digging through old boxes. Our newer system doesn't go that far back, but sometimes the old paperwork gets missed during transfers. I figured I'd find a match, maybe something mislabeled. But when I checked the 1986 section, the boxes stopped at March 11th. The next one jumped to April 2nd. No March 12th. That entire week was missing. I frowned, running my finger along the dusty shelves. Every other month was there, neat and complete. Just that one week, gone. And then I noticed it. Behind the shelf, pressed against the concrete wall, was a loose sheet of paper. I pulled it free. It was brittle, darkened around the edges. Typed at the top, Supplemental Report, File 12. My stomach sank. That was the same case number mentioned in the folder upstairs. The text was short, just a few lines. Subject contained. Confession recorded. Do not reopen file. For internal review only. And at the bottom, a signature. But not a full name, just initials. CM. I stood there staring at it until I realized the lights above me had started to flicker. Not a steady pulse. A rhythm. 3 short. 1 long. 3 short. I laughed nervously. Morse code. I didn't even know Morse. But something about the pattern tugged at me. I shoved the paper into my pocket and turned to leave. But something stopped me. It wasn't a sound exactly. More like a pressure. A sense that the air had thickened. And then, faintly from behind one of the rows, I heard movement. Just one step. Slow. Then another. I froze. No one was supposed to be down there but me. Hello, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. No answer. I took a cautious step toward the sound. The aisles between the shelves were narrow, full of boxes that hadn't been touched in decades. The smell of paper and dust was suffocating. When I reached the end of the aisle, I shone my flashlight around. Nothing. But when I turned back, one of the boxes on the floor was open. I swear it hadn't been before. Inside were photos, hundreds of them, all black and white, people in uniform, mugshots, evidence tags, and at the very bottom, another picture. It was a close-up of a desk. My desk, the same scratches, the same dent in the corner where I dropped my stapler last year. Except in this photo, the file sitting on the desk wasn't empty. It was open, and the page inside had something written on it that I couldn't read. Not clearly. The ink was too dark. But as I tilted it under the light, the letters came through. You found us. I dropped the photo and ran. I didn't even bother closing the archive door. I went straight back to my desk, shut the strange folder, and stuffed it into the bottom drawer. For the rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about that missing week, those names, the initials, CM. I told myself I'd imagine it, that I was overtired, too much caffeine, not enough sleep. But when I came in the next morning, there was another folder waiting. Same type, same yellowed edges. No label. I didn't open it right away. I sat there staring at it for a long time, hoping someone would walk in, claim it, tell me it was a joke. But no one did. When I finally lifted the cover, my hand was shaking. This time, the report was dated one day after the last one, March 13th, 1986. Same officer, same tone, but the last line made my blood run cold. All evidence sealed. Station cleared. The voices remained. That night, I stayed late again, trying to convince myself to throw the folders away. But every time I opened my drawer, there were more. 2, then 3, then 5, all with dates from that same week. All describing things that shouldn't exist. People who disappeared, files that rewrote themselves, radios picking up voices that said things only the officers would know. I tried to tell my supervisor. He laughed. Said maybe someone was messing with me. Said I worked too many nights alone. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But when I went back to my desk, there was a single sheet of paper sitting on top of the new pile, typed in that same uneven font. You're filing them again. I checked the drawer. The old files were gone. Every single one. Only the new ones remained. The lights flickered once. 3 short, 1 long. 3 short. I looked up, and somewhere, faint and far away, I swear I heard someone whisper my name. I thought I could just ignore the files. Pretend they weren't there. After that first night, I shoved everything into a locked cabinet and told myself I'd never open again. But when you work with paper long enough, you start to notice patterns, what's missing, what's wrong. And soon, I realized the wrongness wasn't staying locked away. It was spreading. It started small. A few names missing here and there. At first, I blamed the system. Maybe a glitch, maybe a scanning error. The digital database was a mess anyway. Half the old files were manually entered, full of typos. But then I noticed something strange. It wasn't random. The names that vanished were all victims. No suspects, no witnesses, just the ones who were dead. When I tried to retype them, the letters would delete themselves. I'd hit save, reopen the document, and where the name should have been, there were strange marks. Not symbols I recognized, not letters, not numbers. Just lines, curved, almost like someone had drawn them by hand. The first one looked like a spiral with 3 cuts through it. The next, a loop with a point in the center. I printed one out to look at it closer. When I touched the paper, it felt warmer where the symbol was. I remember holding my breath and running my finger over the ink, expecting it to smudge, but it didn't. It wasn't on the paper. It was in it, like it had burned its way through. That's when I started keeping notes. I know that sounds paranoid, but I couldn't let it go. Every day, a few more names disappeared. Every night, new symbols appeared in their place. I checked the backups, the archives, the microfilm records. Even the physical files started to change. Someone or something was editing the past. One afternoon, I asked Sergeant Ramos about a case from 1998, a hit and run involving a teenage girl named Mira Evers. I remembered filing that one years ago. It was one of those cases that stuck with you. Unsolved, open-ended, forgotten by everyone except the paper pushers. But Ramos just frowned. Mira who? He asked. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he just stared at me like I'd said something foreign. I pulled a report from the cabinet to show him, only to find that her name was gone too. Right there, in black and white, was the same looping symbol. The entire section where her name used to be with blank except for that mark. Ramos looked at me like I'd lost it. He said maybe I mixed up the file with another one. Maybe I was thinking of a different case. But I knew that name. I typed it myself. That night, I stayed late again. The building was quiet, too quiet. The hum of the old radiators was the only sound. I opened the database again, scrolling through old cases one by one. Dozens of reports had changed. Victim, symbol, victim, symbol, victim, symbol. Each symbol was different, but they all felt familiar, like they were trying to form a language. And then I found something that made me stop breathing. My name. It wasn't missing, not yet, but next to it, on a personnel document, was a faint mark. The start of one of those symbols, half drawn, like someone had traced it but didn't finish. For the first time, I saved the file, closed it, and shut the computer down. But the monitor didn't turn off. It stayed black for a second, then lines appeared, faint and gray, like something typing on its own. One word. Remember. I yanked the power cord out of the wall. The lights in the office flickered, and for just a moment, I swore I heard whispering. Faint. Dozens of voices, overlapping, all saying my name. I went home that night and tried to convince myself it was exhaustion. Maybe I'd been staring at screens too long. Maybe it was some sick prank. But the next morning when I came back, every folder on my desk was different. Every one of them had a sticky note on the front. My handwriting, but I didn't write them. Each one had the same message. They are not gone. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the papers. Something was wrong with this place. Not haunted in the movie sense, but in the memory sense. Like the station itself was rewriting what it didn't want to remember. And then the power went out. The fluorescent lights above me blinked and died, leaving the whole room in a gray half-light. I heard the servers in the next room whine as they powered down. For a moment, it was dead silent. Then, one printer started up on its own. Paper began feeding through it. Slow, deliberate. I walked over, even though every part of me told me not to. The first page came out blank. Then another. On the fourth one, faint letters started to appear, like the ink was bleeding through from the other side. It was a list. Names. All the ones that had vanished. But the further down I read, the stranger it got. Halfway through, the names changed. They weren't victims anymore. They were officers. Officers who still worked there, including me. And beside each name, a symbol. Some were the same as the ones from the reports. Some were new. Some looked almost human, like faces drawn in a single stroke. The printer stopped after the last page. I picked it up, my hands trembling, and that's when I heard the voice again, right behind me. A whisper, soft, almost kind. We're still here. I turned around so fast I nearly fell. No one, just a faint hum of the emergency light kicking on. I went back to my desk and tore the printed pages in half. But even as I did, I swear the ink started to shift. The symbols moved. Not fast. Just enough that I could see the lines bending, like they were alive. I don't remember leaving the office. I just remember standing in the parking lot, watching the station windows glow from the inside. Every light on the top floor turned on at once, and then just as suddenly, off again. I tried telling myself it was a power surge, a fluke. But when I came back the next morning, every torn piece of paper was back on my desk, perfectly taped together. The printer was empty. My computer was on, and the first file that opened on the screen was a report with my name at the top. Except now, it wasn't a personnel form. It was an incident report, filed by someone else. Date, pending. Subject, clerk, unresponsive. Possibly missing. Details, do not remove from record. I stared at it, waiting for my name to vanish too. But instead, the letters began to blur, then twist, and right before they disappeared completely, the last thing I saw was the same looping symbol that had replaced every other victim's name. Except this time, it wasn't just a symbol. It was my face, drawn in a single, trembling line, and underneath it, two words appeared. Next file. I used to think paperwork was harmless, that it couldn't hurt anyone. But now, every time I sit at my desk, I feel like the pages are watching me, waiting. It's been 3 nights since the names started vanishing from the system. I've barely slept. Every time I close my eyes, I see those symbols twisting and burning behind my eyelids. I told myself I'd stop looking, that I'd leave those old files alone. But last night, something new appeared. A log entry, dated tomorrow. It wasn't supposed to exist. The station's incident logs only update when something happens. Arrests, calls, patrol notes. But this one had already been filed, time-stamped, and signed off. By me, the title read, Fatalities, pending confirmation. And under details, there was a list. 4 names, all officers currently on shift, including Sergeant Ramos. And the last name on the list was mine. I stared at it for what felt like hours. The more I looked, the more it felt like the words were sinking into the screen. The edges of the text blurred, like wetting spreading through paper. When I tried to delete it, the cursor froze. When I tried to print it, the printer jammed. So I copied the text into a separate file. I just needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. But as soon as I hit save, the computer shut off on its own. And when it came back on, the file name had changed. One more log. That phrase kept echoing in my head. I didn't write it. I'd never seen it before. Still, I couldn't stop reading. The entry wasn't just predicting names. It described how each person would die. It was vague, but detailed enough to feel real. One line said, Ramos, silence between heartbeats. Another, Lewis, drowned without water. And for me, clerk, buried in records. I don't even know what that means. Maybe it's symbolic. Maybe it's nothing. But part of me thinks this thing, whatever's changing the files, has been documenting everything. Not just the past. The future, too. When I came in this morning, Ramos was already in the briefing room. I thought about telling him, about showing him the log. But what would I even say? Hey, Sarge, the computer says you're going to die tomorrow. No, he'd think I'd finally lost it. So I said nothing. But all day, I kept glancing at him, watching the way he rubbed his chest, like something heavy was pressing down on it. The way his breathing seemed just a little uneven. And then it hit me, the phrase in the log. Silence between heartbeats. It wasn't a metaphor. It was literal. That realization made my stomach twist. I shut myself in the record room again, determined to find out where that log came from. I traced its source through the internal database. It led to a folder buried deep in the archives, one that shouldn't even exist anymore. The path was simple. C://logs/internal/decommission/deaths/. Inside were dozens of files, each one labeled with a date. Some from years ago, some from next week. I opened the oldest one first. It was dated 1986, long before I started here. The entries matched old cases from the station's early years. Each one had a short description of a death. But as I scrolled down, I realized they didn't stop at the official records. They continued beyond them, predicting accidents, suicides, disappearances, things that hadn't been reported. Yet when I cross-referenced them with personnel files, every one of them matched someone who'd actually died here. Somehow, these logs were being written before it happened. I opened the most recent file, the one labeled with today's date. There were only 2 entries, one blank, one filled in, and at the bottom, a countdown timer. 6 minutes and 41 seconds. The seconds ticked down slowly, then reset, over and over. I could feel my pulse in my ears. I don't know why I did it, but I typed a question at the bottom of the document, just to see what would happen. Who's writing this? The cursor blinked. Then words started to appear on their own. Not writing, recording. I stared at the screen, frozen. Then I typed again. Recording what? A pause. Then, the ones who forget. The air felt colder suddenly. The hum of the server fans grew louder, almost like breathing. I typed again, slower this time. What happens when the log is complete? The cursor froze. Then the reply came, letter by letter. You will file it. I backed away from the desk, so fast that my chair fell over. It took everything in me not to just run, but I couldn't leave it. I had to know. I opened the log folder again. There was a new file, one that hadn't been there seconds ago. Tomorrow, TXT. My hand shook as I opened it. It was mostly blank, except for the header, station log, clerk entry pending. And under details, a single sentence appeared, filed under his own name. The timer from the previous log reappeared at the bottom, 6 minutes and 41 seconds. But now it was counting down for real. I couldn't close the window. Every time I tried, another one opened, dozens of them, each with the same countdown, each flickering faster. I pulled the power plug again, but the monitor stayed on. That shouldn't be possible. Then the lights in the room dimmed. The hum of the servers changed, a low, pulsing rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. And I realized, with a sick feeling in my stomach, that the timer wasn't random. It was syncing with something. I listened closely, and the pulsing sound matched my own heart. Each beat, the timer flickered. Each pause, it stopped. Silence between heartbeats. The word from Ramos's line echoed through my head. I stumbled out of the records room, heart pounding. Tried to find anyone still around, but the hallway was empty. The lights were flickering in a steady rhythm. On, off, like the entire building was breathing. From the briefing room, I heard the faintest sound, a thud, then a chair scraping. When I looked inside, Ramos was slumped over the desk. He wasn't moving. No blood, no wound, just stillness. I ran to him, shaking his shoulder, but when I pressed my fingers to his neck, I felt nothing. No pulse, just silence. I backed away slowly, staring at him, and that's when I noticed it. On the screen of his computer, a new document opened. Fatalities confirmed, and his name was already crossed out. I remember standing there, staring at the glow of the screen, realizing the countdown from the other file had stopped at 0. That was when the next line began to appear. Next file, clerk. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my bag or turning off the lights. I just remember the sound of the printer coming to life again, spitting out page after page as I passed. When I finally stopped running and looked back, I saw one of the papers on the floor. It had my name on it, and below it, the same looping symbol. It looked almost like a spiral this time, except now I understood what it was. It wasn't a symbol. It was a fingerprint, mine, burned into the paper. It started on a quiet shift, that kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, just wrong. I've been a dispatcher for almost 8 years, and silence isn't normal here. Usually, the room hums with chatter, radios, and calls coming in from every direction. But that night, nothing. No voices, no static, just a faint buzz of fluorescent lights over my head. It was around 2:17 a.m. when the first call came through. The line blinked once. I answered, half expecting a drunk driver or a noise complaint. 911, what's your emergency? Silence. I repeated it again, checking my headset cord, tapping the console just in case. Then, faintly, I heard breathing. It was slow, uneven, like someone trying not to be heard. Hello? Are you safe? Can you tell me where you are? A whisper came through, so faint it barely formed words. Please, please help me. My stomach dropped. Okay, ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Can you tell me your name? No answer, just the soft sound of wind, like she was outside. Then something else. A dull thud, followed by the sound of someone crying. Ma'am, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Can you describe where you are? There was a pause. Then she spoke again, barely audible. I don't know. It's dark. It's so cold. Her voice cracked, like she'd been screaming for hours. I typed fast, logging the call. Caller says she's trapped. Female, mid-20s, possible outdoor environment. I glanced at the Call Idaho panel and froze. No number, no location, no tower signal. It just read, unknown origin. I'd seen that before, but only with prank calls or when a line got crossed mid-transfer. But the way she was crying, that wasn't a prank. Can you tell me what you see? I asked again. More breathing. Then, there's a light. Far away, I think it's a road. A scream cut through my headset. It wasn't loud. It was broken, strangled, like she was trying to hold it in but couldn't. Then, silence. The line went dead. I sat there staring at the console for a while. Calls dropped. It happens all the time. But something about that one, it didn't feel like a glitch. It felt intentional. When I logged it, the system wouldn't let me save the report. The file error popped up. Entry not found. Weird, but I shrugged it off. Tried to move on. Then, around 3:02 a.m., another call came in. 911, what's your emergency? This time, it was a man's voice. Raspy, almost distorted. It's burning, he said. Everything's burning. I straightened up in my chair. Sir, what's burning? Where are you located? He coughed. A deep, wet sound that made me flinch. They locked me in. The door won't open. I can't. Sir, I need your address right now. There was a clattering noise, like with cracking under heat. I could almost hear the flames. I opened the trace window again. Same result. No number. No tower. No location. Can you hear me? I shouted into the mic. He started sobbing. Please, don't let it happen again. Then static. Not normal static. Low and pulsing. Like a deep heartbeat echoing through the line. I pulled off my headset. Heart pounding. I called over to my supervisor, Carol, who sat across the room. Hey, are we getting interference on the West Lines? She looked up from her monitor, confused. No, everything's green. Why? I hesitated. Never mind. Just thought I heard something. She nodded, went back to her reports. I didn't tell her about the voices. By 3:30, I couldn't focus on anything else. I replayed the calls to the archive system, trying to isolate the audio, but both files were gone, completely wiped. Even the backup log showed empty timestamps. The next call came an hour later. The voice was a child's. A boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old. Hello, I said gently. This is 911. Are you in danger? A pause. Then, my mom's asleep. Okay, I said, keeping my tone soft. Can you tell me your name? Eli, he whispered. Hi, Eli. Is your mom okay? She's cold. I frowned. Cold? Like, she's not waking up. He went quiet. I could hear a faint humming in the background. Some kind of tune. I leaned closer to the speaker. Eli, can you tell me where you are? The humming stopped. Then, in that same quiet voice, he said, You already know. My hands froze over the keyboard. What do you mean? He giggled. Not playfully. Not like a kid should laugh. It was hollow. Like something pretending to sound like a child. She said you'd come back. Eli, who said that? But the line went dead. When I checked the call log, something new appeared beside it. A timestamp, 4:06 a.m. And under caller name. Instead of unknown, it just said, returned. I didn't breathe for a full minute. I restarted the system, thinking maybe the software glitched again. But when it came back online, the call history was blank. Every entry from the last 4 hours, gone. I told Carol again, but she just looked at me like I was overworked. Go take a break, she said. Get some air. You've been here too long. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was hearing things that weren't there. But when I stepped outside, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. Across the street, the old phone booth. Yeah, we still had one. Cracked glass and all. Was lit up. The light inside flickered, though nobody was near it. I watched it for a minute, trying to convince myself it was just a bulb. Then it rang. That hollow, metallic sound of payphone ringing in the dark. It echoed through the empty street. I don't know why, but I couldn't move. It kept ringing, slow and steady. After maybe 10 rings, it stopped, and my headset inside lit up again. Line 3, active call, origin, unknown. My throat went dry. I went back in, sat down slowly, and answered. 911, what's your emergency? There was no breathing this time, no crying, just silence. And then in a flat, almost mechanical voice, someone said, You shouldn't have answered. Then the line cut. The headset slipped from my hand. I stared at the panel, waiting for something anything to happen. Then the console flickered, like the power was dipping. For a split second, the monitors flashed white, and on one of them, I swear I saw it, lines of text appeared. Names. Dozens of them. I recognized one. Mine. After that night, I started recording my shifts on a personal device. Every sound, every whisper. But no matter how many times I replay them, there's never anything there. Just silence. And sometimes, when the office goes quiet like that again, I still hear that faint breathing through my headset, like someone waiting for me to pick up. There's something strange about working nights at the dispatch station. Time feels different here. The air gets heavy, like the building itself is tired of listening to people's panic. It was the week after the distress calls. I hadn't told anyone about them, not officially, anyway. Every time I thought about mentioning it, I imagined the look my supervisor would give me. That polite smile people use when they think you finally cracked under pressure. So I kept it to myself. That night, the air outside was soaked with fog, thick and gray. Even the parking lot lamps looked dim. Inside, the hum of the monitors felt louder than usual. The first call came in at 12:43 a.m. 911, what's your emergency? I said automatically, fingers hovering over the keyboard. A man's voice answered, shaky but controlled. Yeah, this is Officer Grant, badge 4281. I'm calling from the highway scanner. You got a record of a vehicle heading north on 77. I blinked. Hold on, let me pull it up. Grant was one of the quieter patrol guys. Straightforward, reliable, the kind of cop who didn't call dispatch unless something was off. I pulled up the feed from the highway radar. The screen glowed with a familiar grid of coordinates and little blue pings representing vehicles. Sure enough, there it was, a small blip about 10 miles north of their unit. Yeah, I said, got a sedan heading northbound. No plate info, but it's moving steady at 60. He hesitated. That's what I thought. We've been following it for about 5 minutes. Things just wrong. Wrong how? He exhaled slowly, static filling the silence between us. No lights, no tags. Looks like it's gliding. Every time we get close, it just slides further away. I frowned, typing notes. Could be fog distortion, reflection off your headlights. That's what I thought, he said, until it took the exit. I froze mid-type. Which exit? Old Ridge, he said quietly. My stomach dropped. That exit had been closed for years. Washed out during the flood 3 winters ago. The road doesn't even connect anymore. It just ends at a barricade. Grant, are you sure that's where it went? Positive, he said. We saw the sign. Even watched it make the turn. I brought up the local road camera. Nothing but static. The timestamp flickered, then jumped ahead by 3 minutes, like the footage had been skipped. Cameras are out, I told him. Can you confirm visual? He didn't answer right away. Then, faintly through the radio, I heard him say, Jesus Christ. Grant. Aye, it's gone, he said finally. We took the turn, but the road's empty. No tire tracks, no nothing. Just fog. The way he said it made my skin crawl. I could hear the wind over his radio. The soft thud of car doors closing, boots crunching gravel. Dispatch, he said again, quieter this time. I think it's still here. What do you mean? He whispered now, voice trembling. I can see the headlights. Through the trees. I adjusted my headset, leaning forward. Grant, back away from the area. You're not authorized to approach without visual confirmation of. But his radio cut off mid-sentence. Then another voice came through. It wasn't Grant. It was low, distorted, almost mechanical, like a recording played backward. I couldn't make out the words, but it repeated the same pattern. 3 sounds, paused, then static. I sat there frozen, watching the radar feed. The blip that represented the patrol car was still there until it wasn't. Both pings vanished at once. I stared at the screen, waiting for them to reappear. Systems glitch sometimes. That's what I told myself. But the log showed something different. Vehicle 4281, connection lost. Secondary signal detected. Unknown ID. Then that, too, faded. A few minutes later, The radio crackled. It was Grant again, except his voice didn't sound right. "Dispatch?" he said. I grabbed the receiver. "Grant, where are you? What happened?" There was a long pause. Then, faintly, "It's fine. We found it." I exhaled in relief. "Good. Can you confirm your location?" Static hissed through the line. Then his voice, slower now. "Old Ridge Road. We're back on the highway." "Copy that," I said, though my gut twisted. Something in his tone wasn't right. "Head back to the station when you can. I'll file the report." "Yeah," he said softly. "We'll be there soon." But they didn't come back. Not that night. Not ever. The next morning, the day's shift took over, and I stayed behind to check the logs. Every line of data from 12:40 to 1:10 a.m. was corrupted. The radar files were blank. Even the system clock had reset itself. When I asked the tech department about it, they just shrugged. Power surge, maybe. Happens sometimes. But I knew better. A week later, I found something strange. In one of the backup servers, buried under archive logs, there was a file I hadn't seen before. Just one entry. No timestamp. No user tag. The title read, Phantom 77. I opened it. It was an audio clip, 13 seconds long. At first, it was just the sound of wind and gravel. Then, a car engine idling. Low, steady, and under it a faint voice. Grant's voice, saying, "It's behind us." Then the engine cut out, and silence. That same night, I stayed late again, trying to convince myself it was just some sick joke. Maybe someone spliced the audio. Maybe I was hearing what I wanted to hear. But then, around 2 a.m., the radar pinged again. Single vehicle. Northbound 77. No plate, no ID. The label read, Phantom 77. I stared at the monitor, hands shaking. "No!" I whispered. The blip slowed, then stopped, right at the intersection near the station. I looked out the window, through the fog, across the empty road. I could barely make out a faint glow. 2 pale lights hovering in the dark. Headlights. They flickered once, then went out. When I checked the radar again, the blip was gone. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? A car that appears and vanishes, with no tracks, no plate, and a ghost in its radio? But a few nights later, another officer called in from the same stretch of road. He said he'd seen taillights drifting ahead of him. Thought it was just another car until he realized they weren't moving on the road. They were hovering above it. He didn't see a license plate either. Just that faint, steady glow. He tried to follow. He never checked back in. Now, every night around the same time, the radar blips once. Just one ping. Always northbound. Always on 77. It never lasts more than a few seconds. And sometimes when I'm alone in the control room and the fog rolls in, I swear I can hear the sound of an idling engine just outside the window. Low, slow, waiting. I've stopped logging it. No one would believe me anyway, but I still leave the headset plugged in just in case. Because once, only once, I thought I heard someone whisper through the static. A voice I knew. It said, "Dispatch, we found again." And then, faintly, like the words were pulled apart by the wind, "It found us too." You learn to live with the hum of the radio. It's constant, low, steady like breathing. Most nights, it's the only thing keeping me awake. But lately, the hum feels different, like it's listening back. I've been working dispatch for 6 years now, and I thought I'd heard it all. Screams, accidents, gunfire, silence that stretched too long. But nothing ever stuck to me like this. It started 2 weeks after the Phantom car incident. The brass filed the case as equipment malfunction. That's what they always do when something doesn't make sense. Paper over cracks. Pretend the noise never happened. But I couldn't shake it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those headlights in the fog. Felt that faint pulse of static in my ear. Then, one night around 1:17 a.m., the radio started acting up again. At first, it was just faint feedback. I thought maybe a storm was rolling in, but the weather feed was clear. The interference got sharper, like someone whispering through a pillow. Then the voices started. I couldn't make out words, just fragments, breaths caught between frequencies. But buried in that static, there were numbers. 7681. Pause. Then again, same tone. 7681. At first, I thought it was some patrol unit's frequency bleeding over. But when I checked, none of the active channels matched. It was coming from nowhere. I tried to trace it. The signal was weak but steady, bouncing across bands like something alive. Every time I tuned closer, it shifted, as if it knew I was listening. After a while, it stopped. I sat there in silence, trying to calm the pulse in my neck. But later that night, when I went to log the call, I realized something strange. The timestamp on the recording ended at 1:18 a.m., but the clock on my console read 1:27. 9 minutes gone. No drop call, no power blink, no nothing. Just gone. I didn't think much of it until the next shift. At almost the same time, 1:17 a.m., it started again. Different numbers this time. 4193, over and over, slow and deliberate. I wrote them down without thinking. The pencil felt too heavy in my hand. When I looked up again, my reflection in the glass looked wrong. Off somehow, like the light from the monitors was bending around me. My voice sounded hollow when I whispered, "Who's sending this?" The numbers stopped, and for a few seconds, the silence felt personal. After that, the messages became a pattern. Every night, same time, same voice, new sequence. Sometimes short, sometimes long. And each time, I wrote them down. I don't even know why. Maybe it was habit. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something deeper, something calling. It wasn't until the fifth night that I noticed something impossible. The numbers matched. Each set aligned perfectly with the badge numbers of the officers who disappeared in the past year. Grant was one of them. So was his partner. So were two others who never made it back from patrol. I checked and rechecked. The digits weren't random. They were identifiers. Someone or something was reciting their names in code. That's when the vision started. It sounds crazy saying that now, but it's the only word that fits. It would happen when the numbers came through. Short bursts at first, like flashes of someone else's memories. A steering wheel slick with rain. A flashlight beam cutting through fog. A woman's hand pressed against glass. I'd blink and it would be gone. But the feeling would stay. The metallic taste of fear. The cold sweat across my palms. By the seventh night, the visions weren't flashes anymore. They were places. I'd see the inside of an empty cruiser. The faint hum of its engine still running. Papers scattered across the passenger seat. A name tag, Grant, soaked in red. Then the voice would start counting again, the numbers dissolving into whispers, too many to separate. When I came to, the pencil in my hand had carved deep grooves into the desk. My knuckles were white. I checked the clock. 1:26 a.m. 9 minutes gone. Again. The next day, I brought it up to one of the techs, just to feel out if maybe something was interfering with our frequency. He gave me that same smile I'd seen 100 times before, the one that says, "You're tired. Go home." But before he turned away, he said something that made my skin crawl. "You're not the first one to hear that, you know." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Old system tech. Back before we switched frequencies. Said the same thing. Numbers. Whispered patterns. Drove him nuts. Said they came from inside the line." "Inside?" I asked. He laughed. "Whatever that means." That night, I didn't want to come in. But curiosity wins every time. I had to know. 1:17 a.m. The static returned. This time, the numbers came faster. 4193761. It looped twice, then stopped. I waited, breath caught in my throat. Then, through the faint crackle, I heard something new. A voice, not mechanical this time. Human, soft, familiar. "Dispatch," it whispered. "Why didn't you answer?" The world seemed to tilt. I froze. It was Grant. "Grant." My voice came out broken. "Where are you?" No response. Just the sound of faint breathing. Then a low hum, like an engine running underwater. Then quietly, "You shouldn't have written them down." The line went dead. The air felt heavier after that, like something was pressing down on me. When I looked back at the console, every monitor was filled with static, but hidden in that white noise was movement. Shapes that flickered just out of focus. Faces, maybe. I swear I saw eyes. Then the screens blinked off one by one, until the room went dark except for the faint glow of the main display. Across the center, the numbers began to appear again, line after line of them, scrolling faster than I could read. When it stopped, only one sequence remained. 001417. That was my badge number. I don't remember standing up, but I did. My headset slid off, dangling by its cord. I stared at the numbers, pulse hammering in my ears. Then the radio crackled again, just once. This time, no voice, just the sound of faint typing, like someone on the other end was mirroring every key I hit. I reached for the power switch, but before I could, a sharp feedback scream filled the room. High, piercing, unbearable. I covered my ears and stumbled back, and then silence. When the lights came back on, everything looked normal. The screens were back. The clock read 1:27 a.m. 9 minutes. Gone. There was a new file in the log. Audio clip. Time-stamped 1:18 a.m. I played it. The sound was faint, buried under static, but I recognized it instantly. My own voice, repeating the same numbers, over and over. Now, every night at 1:17, I sit here and wait. The hum always starts the same way, slow and patient, crawling up through the wires. I've tried recording it, tracing it, blocking it. Nothing stops it. And sometimes when the numbers start to come through, I see reflections in the glass behind me, flickers of movement, like people standing just outside the room, whispering to each other. I used to turn around. Now I don't, because the last time I did, I saw myself sitting at the console, head tilted, eyes open, and the voice on the radio said, "Next sequence complete." That was 3 nights ago. Since then, I haven't slept. The numbers don't stop now. They follow me home, through the whir of the fridge, the buzz of my phone charger, the hum of my car engine. Last night, I woke up at exactly 1:17 a.m. My alarm clock was flashing. 001417. I think it's counting down. And when it hits 0, I know what happens next, because the voices already told me. They said, when the numbers end, another one begins. And this time, it's mine. I used to think time inside the dispatch room was just slower. You know that feeling, where a minute feels like 5, and hours smear together under the hum of fluorescent lights. But that night, time didn't just slow down. It folded. It was around 2:14 a.m. when I noticed the first repeat. The phones had been quiet for nearly half an hour. That was rare for a Friday. Usually, I'd have at least one domestic dispute, a drunk driver, maybe a noise complaint. But it was dead silent, just a low crackle of the radio and the faint buzz of the monitors. Then the line lit up. 911, what's your emergency? A woman's voice shaking, gasping. There's someone outside my house. He's not moving, just standing there. Her voice made my skin prickle. Not because of what she said, but because I knew it, every word. It was the same call I'd taken 2 nights ago. I pulled up the log, scrolling back through the records. Yes, same time, same street, same caller ID, even the same background noise, the faint creak of a ceiling fan, the hum of a TV somewhere. I remembered that call vividly because the responding officers had found nothing. No footprints, no figure, just a porch light flickering in the wind. But here she was again. Same tone, same breathless panic. I tried to play along like it was normal. "Ma'am, what's your address?" She gave it, the exact same one. "Okay, stay on the line. Can you describe the person?" Her breath hitched. "He's closer now. I think he's looking at me." The sound of glass rattled through the line, then silence, and then, just like before, the connection cut. The line went dead. But what happened next? That's when I realized it wasn't a glitch, because 30 seconds later, the call came again. Same number, same timestamp, same words. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone outside my house. Her voice trembled in the same rhythm, like a recording on repeat. I didn't answer this time. I just sat there, listening, letting it play out exactly as before. Every breath, every sound looping perfectly. When it ended, I checked the call history again. Now there were 2 identical entries, one right after the other. I stared at the monitors until my vision blurred. Something deep inside me whispered that I shouldn't tell anyone, that if I did, it might make it real. But I called Officer Cole anyway. He picked up on the first ring. "Cole, it's dispatch. You remember that woman on Brookside Lane?" A pause. Then, "Yeah, why?" She just called again. Same time, same everything. Another pause. "You sure?" I'm looking at the logs. He sighed through the static. "We'll check it out." But I heard in his voice the doubt, the tired disbelief. When the line clicked off, I leaned back, rubbing my temples. The air felt heavy, stagnant, and even though the heater hummed, the room felt cold, like someone had left a window open. That's when the radio crackled to life. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. We're on Brookside. No movement. Place looks empty." I swallowed. "Copy that." Static filled the silence again. Then, softly, something else bled through. A whisper. At first, I thought it was feedback. But it wasn't random noise. It was rhythmic, repeating, 3 digits, over and over. 214. My eyes darted to the corner of the screen where the clock glowed. 2:14 a.m. My heart thudded in my chest. Then Cole's voice cut back through, uneasy now. "Dispatch, say again? We're getting weird noise on our end." I hesitated. I didn't transmit. Silence. Then, through the radio, came the faint sound of my own voice. 911, what's your emergency? It was my voice, word for word. The same tone, the same inflection I'd used minutes earlier. And after that, her voice, trembling, broken. "There's someone outside my house." Cole's voice, suddenly sharp. "What the hell is this?" "Dispatch. What recording are you playing?" I felt my mouth go dry. "Cole, that's not me. I'm not playing anything." But the playback continued. The same conversation, bleeding through the radio. Every sound, every word, looping again, and then a new line. Something that hadn't happened before. The woman's voice changed. Lower, rougher, like she was speaking through grit. "He's not outside anymore." I froze. "He's in the house." The radio went dead. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The air in the room felt too thick to breathe. Then the line blinked again. Same number, same timestamp, same opening. "There's someone outside my house." I whispered to myself, "No, not again." But it kept happening, over and over. Each loop, slightly different. A word out of place. A sound that hadn't been there before. And with every cycle, the woman's voice grew more distorted, until it didn't even sound human anymore. At one point, I swear I heard laughter behind her. Soft, male, familiar. I reached for the power switch, ready to shut the console off, when I saw something that made my hand freeze midair. The system clock no longer moved. It was locked at 2:14 a.m. No matter what button I pressed, it didn't change. That's when the lights flickered. Every monitor blinked to black, then flared back with the same frozen screen, the same timestamp, the same log repeating across every display. And then the radio whispered again. But this time, it wasn't the woman. It was me. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. My voice said through static. "We're on Brookside. No movement." Word for word. Then Cole's voice layered with static. "Copy that." Then the whisper. 214. I backed away from the console, my chair scraping across the floor. My mind felt like it was splitting in two. Half of me trying to rationalize it, the other half knowing that something in this room was wrong on a level I couldn't name. I must have blinked because suddenly the monitors were showing a live feed, grainy footage from the dash cam of Unit 4. Cole's car, parked under the streetlight on Brookside. The feed shouldn't have been there. Dispatch didn't have access to dash cam streams. But there it was, Cole sitting in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead. No movement, no radio chatter, just him. Then he turned, slowly, and looked straight into the camera. The static deepened, like the air itself was hissing, and his lips moved, barely, I couldn't hear the words, but I could read them. He said my name. Then the screen went black. The lights flickered again. The hum of the electronics grew louder, like a swarm building in the walls. And suddenly, everything reset. The phone rang. The clock read 2:14 a.m. And the voice came again. There's someone outside my house. I screamed into the receiver. Stop calling. Please stop. But it didn't matter, because her next words were different now. Why didn't you help me the first time? I dropped the phone. The call kept playing from the speaker, her voice cracking with static. Then I heard footsteps behind me, not from the hall, from the radio, like something walking just beyond the signal. It whispered again, but not numbers this time. Names. Cole, Miller, then mine. I reached for the switch again, slammed the power off. The lights died. The hum stopped. Silence. I thought I'd broken the loop, but then out of the darkness, the radio flickered to life on its own. A faint voice came through. Dispatch, this is Unit 4. Static. Copy. I whispered before I could stop myself. Just checking in, Cole's voice said. Everything's quiet here. I opened my mouth to answer, but then I saw the clock glow faintly in the dark. 2:14 a.m. And the call log on the dead screen slowly refreshed itself. The same name, the same number, the same message, over and over, like the system was breathing. And that's when I realized something that made my stomach turn. It wasn't time that was looping. It was me. Some part of me was trapped inside that call, answering it again and again, trying to fix it, trying to help. But it always ends the same way, with that voice, that number, that moment frozen forever at 2:14 a.m. And every night since then, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the phone ringing. Not loud, just waiting for me to pick up again. I've worked night shifts for most of my career. You get used to a certain rhythm after a while. Quiet hours, the hum of the air vents, the crackle of the radio now and then. But that night, the quiet felt different. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. I came on duty around 11:30 p.m. Same as always. The station was dim, half the lights off to save power. Cole from the previous shift gave me a quick nod on his way out. He looked tired, but he always did. He said, "Slow night, should stay that way." He was wrong. The first thing I noticed after he left was the sound, or the lack of it. Usually, even during slow hours, you could hear things. Cars in the distance, wind brushing the flag outside, a dog barking somewhere down the road. That night, nothing, no cars, no wind, just this dead silence that pressed against the windows. I remember thinking maybe there was a storm coming. The air felt thick, like the sky was holding its breath. But the radar was clear. No rain, no wind warnings, nothing at all. I sat down at my desk, poured myself some coffee, and started logging the reports from earlier in the day. Paperwork keeps your mind from wandering on nights like that. But after a few minutes, I realized I was reading the same line over and over. My focus was slipping. It was the silence. It crawled under my skin. I caught myself tapping the edge of my pen just to hear something. Then I noticed the clock on the wall. The second hand wasn't ticking. It just sat there, frozen at 12:07. I stared at it for a good 20 seconds before I looked down at my watch. 12:07. Exact same time. I stood up, walked over, and tapped the glass on the clock. Ticked. It started again like nothing had happened. When I sat back down, the radio crackled softly. Static, faint, nothing clear. I reached for the receiver, but it went silent before I could speak. Dispatch to Unit 4, you copy? I tried. Static, then nothing. I figured the frequency might be acting up again. But the quiet after that was worse than before. It felt like the station itself was holding its breath. I walked the halls for a while just to move. The lights flickered a bit near the back storage room. Old wiring. I'd seen it before. But that night, every flicker seemed slower, like the bulbs were trying to blink in a pattern I couldn't understand. The air was colder in there too. My breath didn't show, but it felt close. Close enough that I kept my hand near my radio, even though I didn't know what for. When I got back to the front desk, I noticed something else. The phones were all dark. Not off, just unlit. The line indicators always blink faint green, even when idle. But now they were dead black. I picked up one and listened. No dial tone. Then, faintly, I thought I heard something in the receiver, like breathing. Just one slow exhale. I lowered the phone slowly. My fingers were shaking. The second hand on the clock had stopped again. 12:07. This time, my watch said 12:07 too. I remember whispering, "That's not possible." Then the lights buzzed once, hard, and everything flickered out for a second. When they came back, I saw a movement at the far end of the hallway. Just a shadow. A dark shape near the bulletin board, gone as soon as I blinked. I told myself it was a trick of the lights. I even said it out loud, like that would make it real. Old wiring. That's all. But something in me knew better. I went back to my desk, and when I sat down, the computer screen had gone black. No sleep mode, no warning, just black. Then, slowly, the monitor flickered to life on its own. Not the usual blue login screen. Just white text on a black background. "Are you still there?" I froze. I didn't touch a key. Didn't move. Then, after a few seconds, the text vanished, and the screen returned to normal. I tried to shake it off, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Something wasn't right with this place tonight. I decided to check outside, just to convince myself the world hadn't stopped turning. When I stepped out into the parking lot, the silence hit even harder. No crickets, no wind. The flag outside the station hung limp against the pole, like it had forgotten how to move. The streetlight stretched down the road in perfect stillness, glowing faintly in the fog. It looked frozen, like a photograph of a town pretending to be alive. Then I heard it, far off at first, a faint metallic clinking, like chains shifting in the wind, except there was no wind. I scanned the lot, the edges of the trees, the road beyond. Nothing, but I could feel eyes on me, watching from the dark. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't fear exactly, more like recognition, like whatever was out there already knew me. I stepped back inside and locked the door. The warmth of the room hit me like a wave, but it didn't help. The silence had weight again. I sat at the desk and glanced up at the clock. 12:07. I looked down at my watch. 12:07. My chest tightened. I took a deep breath, trying not to panic. Maybe the power surge messed with everything. Yeah, that made sense. That had to make sense. Then the radio crackled again. Just one voice. Low, distant, barely there. It said, "You shouldn't be here." My blood went cold. I picked up the receiver, my hand shaking. "Who is this?" No answer. Just static. Then, faintly, underneath the static, I heard again, the clinking sound. Closer this time. The kind of sound you hear when something metal scrapes against concrete. I stood up so fast my chair tipped backward. The radio hiss then went dead. The silence that followed felt wrong in a way I can't describe. Like it wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the absence of life. I reached for my badge out of habit, but my hand brushed against the cold edge of the metal. It felt colder than it should have. Then I noticed something new. The lights above the main hall had gone out completely, one by one, from the far end toward me, each click echoing louder than the last. Click, 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 until only the lamp above my desk remained. The shadows stretched long across the floor. For a moment, I thought I saw a movement again near the bulletin board. A shape, tall, still, just watching. I blinked and it was gone. When the lights flickered again, the sound came back. The hum of the vents, the faint ring of the phones rebooting, the distant noise of the outside world returning. Like someone had pressed play after a long pause. The clock ticked again. 12:08. 1 minute had passed. I sat there for a long time, staring at that second-hand move. The relief I felt was sharp and shallow. But somewhere deep inside, I knew it hadn't really ended. It had just started moving again. That night was the first time I felt it. The stillness before something breaks. The kind of quiet that isn't empty, but full of things that don't want to be seen. And even now, when I'm sitting in the same chair, the radio whispering softly beside me, I sometimes glance up at that clock. And every so often it happens again. The second hand freezes. The world holds its breath. And I feel that same silence crawl back into the room. Like it's waiting for me to notice it again. You'd think, after so many years as a dispatcher, I'd stop getting spooked by the ringing of the phone. But that sound, it still gets me. Especially that night. It started slow. Just another quiet shift after the strange silence from the week before. Everything felt normal again. Normal enough that I convinced myself the last time. The clocks, the whispers, the stillness was all in my head. Just exhaustion. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. But around 1:23 a.m., the first call came in. The tone was sharp, echoing through the station like it always does. I answered out of habit. 911, what's your emergency? For a moment, nothing, just soft static. Then a woman's voice. Shaky, afraid. Please, he's in the house. I straightened up immediately, adrenaline kicking in. Ma'am, what's your name? What's your address? But she didn't answer that. All I heard was her breathing, fast and shallow. Then, in a whisper, she said, he's coming back. Stay on the line, I said, typing fast. We're sending someone. Can you tell me where you are? There was a soft thud in the background, like a door shutting. Then nothing. The line went dead. I checked the call log. No number. No source. Just unknown origin. That happens sometimes. Burners. Drop signals. But something about her voice stayed with me. There was a kind of distance in it, like she wasn't really there. A few minutes later, I tried to trace it manually through dispatch records. But there was nothing. No entry. No timestamp. No call. It was like it hadn't happened at all. I told myself it was a glitch in the system. The lines here are old, half of them patched through outdated towers. But even then, I couldn't shake the sound of her voice. About 40 minutes later, it happened again. Another call. Different tone. Different voice. 911, what's your emergency? This time, a young man, maybe late 20s. He was whispering, panicked. There's blood, he said, his voice cracking. It's everywhere. I don't know what happened. I asked him for his name, but he didn't respond. Then I heard it. Someone sobbing in the background. A woman, maybe. The man whispered, she's gone. I can't wake her up. My stomach dropped. I typed the details as fast as I could. What's your address, sir? We can help you, but I need to know where you are. He didn't answer right away. There was a sound like footsteps, slow and dragging. Then he said, almost in a whisper, I already called. You didn't come. Sir, what do you mean? This is the first time I've spoken with you. But he just repeated it. You didn't come. Then the line went silent. I tried calling back. Nothing. No number. No signal. Just a blank space in the record again. That's when I checked the system clock. 1:23 a.m. The exact same minute as the first call. For a while after that, I just sat there, staring at the radio, listening to the faint hum of static. I felt this tight pressure behind my ribs, like something was slowly pressing inward. I needed to clear my head. So I went through the old incident archives, maybe to distract myself. The filing system isn't great, but there's a digital record that goes back decades. And that's when I saw it. A report from 1998. Domestic disturbance. Caller. Female, mid-30s. Statement. He's in the house. The address field had been smudged in the scan, but the timestamp was clear. 1:23 a.m. I didn't want to believe it, but the more I read, the worse it got. The report said the responding officers found the woman dead. No suspect ever caught. My stomach turned cold. The second call, the one from the man, had a record too. Different year. Same minute. Same phrasing. You didn't come. He'd been found with his wife in their kitchen, both victims of an apparent murder-suicide. It happened in 2004. I stared at those records until the words blurred. Both calls, people long dead, both logged at the same time. That's when the phone rang again. I froze, just stared at it for a full 5 seconds before answering. 911, what's your emergency? At first, all I heard was static. Then, faintly, the sound of children crying. It was distant, like through a wall. Who am I speaking with? I asked, my voice shaking. A small voice came through, a little girl. Please, it's cold. I can't find Mommy. I swallowed hard. What's your name, sweetheart? Can you tell me where you are? There was a pause, then a whisper, the water's coming in. I could hear it too, a rushing sound, faint, muffled, but real. I typed it out as fast as I could, searching for a flood alert, anything nearby. Nothing. The weather was clear. Stay with me, I said. Help is coming. Just keep talking to me, okay? But the line went quiet. Then I heard the static swell. Louder this time, harsh enough that I pulled the phone away from my ear. When it stopped, the line went dead again. And when I checked the clock, 1:23 a.m. I don't know how long I sat there after that. I just remember the hum of the fluorescent light above me, the faint creak of the chair, my own breathing. Eventually, I opened the flood incident logs. And there it was, a case file from 1972. A family drowned when a nearby dam burst. Mother, father, daughter, age 7. The daughter's name was Abby. Under call details. The note read, caller reported rising water. Disconnected before address confirmed. I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't. The next day, I tried to tell my supervisor. He looked at me like I was losing it. Old recordings, he said. Lines cross sometimes. You know that. Except, I didn't know that. Not like this. Not word for word calls from the dead. I checked again the following night, just to prove to myself it was over. No phantom calls. No voices. Just the usual drunks and car wrecks. Until exactly 1:23 a.m. The phone didn't ring this time, but the radio did. A single, faint transmission. It wasn't any unit I knew. It just said, dispatch, you didn't come. And then silence. No trace. No log. Just me, alone in the dark room. The hum of the lights growing louder. The shadows thicker. I could feel it. The same weight in the air from before. Like something had slipped through the wires and settled here with me. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear them. The woman, the man, the child. Their words overlap, soft and distant, like voices through fog. Please, he's in the house. There's blood. It's cold. You didn't come. I try to tell myself they're echoes, data fragments from old calls, maybe looping through the system. But deep down, I know better. These aren't calls that cross wires. They're not glitches. They're reminders. Reminders of the ones we couldn't save. And lately, when the room gets quiet around 1:23, I sometimes think I hear a fourth voice. A man's voice I don't recognize. It always says the same thing. I'm next. The basement had always been my least favorite part of the station. Cold, damp, and lined with rows of filing cabinets that smelled of mold and old paper. I never had a reason to go down there much. Not unless someone needed a specific report or record. But that night, the paperwork piled up. They needed something from the archives, and there I was, headed for the basement. I flicked the light switch at the top of the stairs. The fluorescent bulb buzzed, flickered once, then settled into a dull glow. The air hit me immediately, musty, sour, like dust that had settled for decades. I shivered and pulled my jacket tighter around me. At first, everything seemed normal. Just rows of gray cabinets, stacked boxes, and the faint smell of mildew. I stepped down carefully, my boots echoing softly in the empty room. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. No hum of the ventilation from upstairs. No distant chatter. Just a heavy silence that made the skin on my arms prickle. I moved toward the far corner, where the files they needed were supposed to be. The light above that section flickered once, twice, then steadied. I muttered a curse under my breath. The wiring in this building was older than some of the officers here. Then I noticed something odd. A file folder at the edge of the cart had shifted. I could swear it wasn't there before. I froze. Maybe I'd imagined it. My eyes were playing tricks. I stepped closer. Another folder, the one below it, slid slightly, exposing a page. I reached out, touched it. It was a personnel record from years ago. Someone I didn't recognize. Nothing alarming. Just a name, a badge number, and some notes. I started pulling the files I needed, stacking them neatly on the cart. Then, Almost imperceptibly, I heard a scrape. The filing cabinet to my right had moved, just a little. A drawer had shifted, like someone had nudged it with a hand. I turned sharply, shining my flashlight across the rows. Nothing, just cabinets, boxes, dust motes floating in the narrow beam. Get a grip, I whispered to myself. Old building, old wiring, air currents. I bent down to grab a file, and when I straightened up, a folder from the very top shelf fell. No wind, no vibration. It just dropped in front of me, landing neatly on the floor. I swallowed hard. My pulse quickened. This wasn't normal. I tried to shake it off and continued gathering files. But then I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. A shadow, shifting among the cabinets. I spun around, flashlight slicing through the dark. Nothing, just the stacks of paper, the low hum of the basement lights. I told myself I was imagining it. Old building, overworked mind. Still, I couldn't ignore the feeling, like I wasn't alone, like someone or something was watching me. I moved toward another row of cabinets. The light flickered again. A drawer opened slowly, on its own, just enough to reveal the top edge of a folder. I froze. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, just a breath of sound, almost drowned in the buzz of the lights. I turned in a slow circle, shining the flashlight into every shadow corner. Nothing. I backed away from the drawer, my hand brushing against the edge of a cabinet for support. And then I saw it, a file, laying on the floor a few feet away, lifted slightly, as if caught in a tiny updraft. Then it floated just a few inches and landed upright against the cart. My stomach turned. I took a step back, heart hammering, and the next file moved too. Then another, then a small stack in the corner, all aligning neatly, almost intentionally, forming a line toward the far end of the basement. I could feel the presence before I even acknowledged it consciously. Heavy, pressing, patient, watching me. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to run, but the stairs felt miles away. My hands shook as I picked up the files I'd come for, my eyes darting constantly to the moving stacks. Then, from somewhere deeper in the shadows, a soft sound came, a scraping like nails across metal. Slow, deliberate. I froze again, gripping the cart for support. I whispered under my breath, "It's nothing, just a building, just a building." But it wasn't nothing. I felt it in my chest. Something alive in this basement, older than the building itself. A drawer slammed shut somewhere behind me, echoing like a gunshot. I jumped. My flashlight flickered, went dim. The files on the floor shifted again. This time, one of them spun in the air, landing upright facing me. I bent down and read the name. It was a former officer, deceased, long gone. My pulse raced. I shouldn't be seeing this. I should know the names of the dead on files I hadn't pulled yet. And then, faintly, a whisper came from the line of files. My turn. I stumbled back, nearly hitting the cart. My breath came in short bursts. I looked around. Nothing. The line of files started moving again, inching toward the staircase. Slowly, perfectly aligned, leading me out. I swallowed hard. The rational part of my mind screamed that this was impossible, but every instinct in my body told me to follow. I picked up the files I'd come for, my hands shaking, and edged toward the stairway. With every step, the basement seemed to stretch. The shadows grew longer, darker. The light flickered more violently. Then I heard another whisper, closer this time. Clearer. Don't leave. My legs nearly gave out. I wanted to drop everything, run, but something in me couldn't move. It felt like the presence wanted to be acknowledged, wanted me to see it. I turned slowly, sweeping the flashlight over the cabinets one last time. Nothing but darkness, but I could feel it. The air pressing against my skin, heavier now, colder. I ran the rest of the way up the stairs, nearly tripping. The basement door slammed behind me, as if pushed by some unseen hand. I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The fluorescent lights upstairs felt warm, comforting, safe, but my mind raced. Files, moving on their own, names I shouldn't know, whispers in the dark. It wasn't just my imagination. It couldn't be. I told myself it was an old building, sensitive to air currents, drafts, even minor tremors. I tried to rationalize it, but deep down, I knew this was different. Older, patient, watching. I spent the rest of my shift upstairs, pretending to work. I didn't go back to the basement. I avoided it completely. But when I closed my eyes at night, I saw the files, stacked neatly, forming a path through the basement. I could hear the whispers, soft patient calling me back, and the names of officers, clerks, people long dead, lined up perfectly on the folders. I didn't sleep. I kept a small light on, my mind replaying every movement, every sound. And somewhere deep in the back of my head, I knew they were still there, waiting. The basement wasn't just storage. It wasn't just archives. It was alive, and it remembered everyone who had passed through it. I still avoid the basement. Every time I hear a door creak down there, every time I smell the mildew in old paper, my skin crawls, because I know whatever is down there, whatever moves those files, it's still watching, and it isn't finished. I don't remember what made me sit down at the desk that night. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was a weight of knowing this shift would stretch until morning alone, like every night. The station smelled different. Not the usual coffee and paper. Not the faint disinfectant lingering from the day crew. It smelled like dust, old ink, and something colder. Something alive that didn't belong. I turned on the recorder. The red light blinked steadily, like a heartbeat. Final log. I muttered, testing the microphone. It picked up my voice clearly. My own words sounded heavier than usual, deeper, strained. I tried to focus. There were reports to file, calls to log. The usual, but everything felt wrong. The radio crackled first. Soft, faint, almost drowned in static. Then a voice, a familiar one, but not. A voice I thought I'd never hear again. Are you there? It was my own voice, coming through the radio. I froze, my hand hovering over the recorder. I tried to speak, to answer, but my voice caught in my throat. The sound of it over the radio was sharper than mine, urgent, hollow. Who's there? I whispered. The silence stretched. Then the radio hissed, and my voice spoke again. You shouldn't be here. I dropped the mic. My pulse raced. The station felt smaller. Suddenly, the walls pressing in. Every shadow was alive, flickering just outside the corner of my eye. I told myself it was fatigue. I'd worked enough night shifts to know the brain plays tricks when the hours are long. But something in the pit of my stomach said otherwise. I picked up the mic again. Final log, I said, trying to sound normal. I've completed all calls of the night. Nothing unusual to report. Nothing unusual. The words sounded hollow even to me, because I knew I could feel in the hum of the fluorescent lights, in the drafts slipping from the vents, the calls, the voices I'd heard, the shadows that moved when no one was there. They weren't gone. I wrote my notes slowly, deliberately, the pen scratching across paper that seemed to breathe beneath my fingers. Every so often, the ink would smear without warning, though I never touched it. The recorder blinked red. I pressed stop, then rewind just to listen. My voice was there, but beneath it, another layer. A whispering, soft, urgent, incoherent, just at the edge of comprehension. I leaned closer, straining. Leave, it hissed. Before, static swallowed it. I sank into the chair, hands on my face. The shadows moved again. I could feel them crawling across the room, pooling in corners, twisting along the edges of the lights. I got up and walked slowly to the front doors. The lock clicked behind me. Not my action. Someone or something had locked it. I tried to turn the handle. The knob wouldn't budge. Not a wrench, not force, nothing. It was solid, unmoving. I pounded with my fists. Open! I shouted, my voice raw. The radio crackled again. A voice soft and cold. You can't leave. The recorder blinked again. I picked it up and pressed play. My voice logged everything. Reports, calls, routine notes. But beneath it, faintly a sound. Footsteps. Slow, dragging, circling. I spun, shining the flashlight across the room. Nothing. Then I caught a reflection in the glass panel of the door. Movement. A figure standing just behind the shadows. Tall, silent, watching. I tried the radio. I called for backup. Static. Only static. I sank back into my chair, heart hammering. The recorder still running. The shadows stretching, curling, pressing closer. I started talking. Quietly at first, logging everything. I'm in the station. Alone. No calls. No activity. Lights flicker. Shadows move. Air feels heavy. I can't explain it. The whispering grew. It wound around the words, trying to shape them, twist them into something darker. I paused, staring at the recorder. It blinked red, steady, waiting. I wrote as fast as I could, trying to record every movement, every sound, every fleeting thought, because I knew if I didn't, it would erase it. A stack of reports shifted. I watched, frozen, as the papers rose, twisting slightly in the air before settling neatly on the edge of the desk. The shadow moved again, gliding along the walls. I could see it reflected in every surface. The dark figure just beyond the light. I spoke into the recorder. They're here. I can feel them. The station, it isn't mine anymore. It belongs to them. The whispering rose. Soft syllables, unintelligible, pressing against my skull like cold fingers. I held the mic closer. Final log, I said. I am recording this as my last report. If anyone finds this, know that the station is dangerous. The calls, the shadows, they aren't gone. They wait, they watch, they remember. I trailed off, the words catching in my throat. Then the lights went out completely. Black, the hum of electricity, disappeared. The shadow closed in, edges blending with the dark. I felt it move behind me, breathe. I tried to grab the recorder, to finish, to leave something tangible. My hands passed through it. Cold, empty. I realized then I wasn't holding it. I wasn't holding anything. I was being pulled. The chair scraped across the floor, falling over. I couldn't see anything but darkness. The whispers pressed in, unintelligible now, urgent, demanding. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how it ends. And then silence. The next morning, the day crew found the station quiet. No trace of me. No sign of struggle. Just the recorder, blinking red on the desk. They played it back. My voice was there. But beneath it, always the whispering. You can't leave. Don't forget, we're still here. Since that night, the station has been different. Officers report shadows in corners, cold spots in empty hallways, whispers over the radio that make no sense, phones ringing with no one on the line. The station remembers. The station waits. And sometimes when the lights flicker at night, I swear I hear my own voice faint, calling for help. But I'm not there to answer anymore. The last log remains. Red light blinking. A record of what happened. A warning. And the station is still alive. Watching. Waiting. For the next one.